I caught my fiancé hooking up with my sister while I'm pregnant, and tomorrow I'm exposing everything at our family gathering. I have reached the edge of what I can bear. I am 28, and have been with my fiancé for just over 3 years. We live together with my 4-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. 3 weeks ago, I found out I am pregnant again. At first, I was overjoyed, naive enough to think we were finally creating the stable family I had always wanted. He grew distant the very next day. He ignored my excitement, started coming home late, and kept his phone glued to him at all times. I began noticing strange calls and those discreet social media notifications that vanished too quickly. My gut told me to investigate. I almost wish I had not. He has been secretly hooking up with my older sister behind my back. She was the one I always tolerated, even though she drags drama wherever she goes. She would hug me when relatives were around, pretend to be the supportive older sibling, then turn around and badmouth me to her friends. I never imagined she would crawl into my life this deeply. It felt like a slap in the face to read their messages calling me clueless for not noticing. He told her about the pregnancy before he was honest with me about his doubts, and they joked about how stressed I would be raising another child. My sister bragged that our entire family thinks she is the more interesting and more popular sibling. Meanwhile, I am just the quiet one who apparently deserves this. I do not know if they are still meeting in secret or if they just get a kick out of hurting me. My fiancé denies everything whenever I confront him, says I am hormonal, that my imagination is running wild. My sister keeps messaging me, telling me I should keep my mouth shut and stop being dramatic. I am done hiding my anger. My mother wants me to talk it out calmly, but how do I fix something so broken I can barely breathe? My fiancé thinks I will just accept this. He is counting on me being too shy or too pregnant to do anything. Tomorrow, I plan to blow this up in front of the entire family. We are supposed to have a casual get-together at our parents' house, ironically to celebrate my pregnancy announcement. I will gather my phone logs, the screenshots, and all those humiliating texts they send each other. Once all the relatives have settled in, I will put everything on display. No more secrets. I might burn everything in the process. I might lose any chance of a pleasant co-parenting scenario, but I feel like I have no other way to reclaim my dignity. I have been crying non-stop for days, my nerves are shot, and all I get from my fiancé is either silent treatment or insults. My sister taunts me and acts like I am worthless. I see no reason to protect them anymore. I do not know what happens next. Maybe they will run off together. Maybe they will lie or twist things around to make me look insane. My fiancé has not contributed much financially, so I worry about affording my daughter and this potential new baby on my own. Yet I cannot pretend everything is normal. I have to protect whatever self-respect I have left. I am going to set my entire world on fire tomorrow. Part of me feels terrified, the other part is numb. Regardless, I am done letting them tiptoe around my heart. If they want my silence, they should have kept their betrayal better hidden. Let everyone see exactly who they are. That is all I have left. Update: I am still reeling from what happened. After writing my last post, I spent hours debating with myself about whether I should really go through with exposing them at our family gathering. A part of me was scared I would turn my whole life upside down forever, but I knew I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me while pretending everything was fine. I called my mom beforehand to let her know I was breaking up with him and to prepare her. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there, including my ex-fiancé and my sister. My mother tried to pull me aside, whispering that we should talk first. I stayed calm, walked straight into the living room where everyone was sitting, and asked them to listen. They looked confused. My sister immediately rolled her eyes, and my fiancé mumbled something, probably hoping I would stay silent. I started reading the most shocking parts of the messages I found between the two of them. They mocked me, joked about me not noticing anything, and said I deserved this. I had timestamps proving he was sneaking around with my own sister while I was at home with my daughter. My sister stood up and accused me of lying, her voice defensive and low-pitched. But I just kept reading. The messages spoke for themselves. I revealed how he told her about my pregnancy before even discussing it with me and how they laughed about me being stressed raising another child. My fiancé tried to dismiss me, claiming I was overreacting and misinterpreting the situation because of my emotional, pregnant state. He even blamed my mental health. By then, he stormed out of the room, and my sister started crying. My dad stared at the floor, silent, while my mother looked horrified. Finally, my sister snapped and stormed out, yelling that I was a dramatic liar who blew everything out of proportion. Now the fallout begins. My fiancé, or rather, my ex-fiancé, has been texting me non-stop. One moment, he says he is sorry, the next, he blames me for humiliating him. He shows zero genuine remorse. He is just mad that I exposed him. My sister calls me horrendous names, says I ruined her image, and refuses to take responsibility. She insists I am making up drama. Honestly, I do not even know if they are still seeing each other or blaming each other for being caught. Either way, their secret is out, and that is all I wanted. I am now talking to a lawyer because this man barely contributed financially before. I have to protect my daughter and ensure I never have a child with him. Only the thought of raising 2 kids alone is terrifying. I feel numb and heartbroken at times, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. At least everyone knows the truth now. I exposed everything that day in the living room, but at least I am no longer being trampled on in silence. My sister and ex-fiancé can no longer laugh behind my back. Yes, things will probably get messy. They might lie to other relatives, people we mutually know, or twist the story. But I am glad I refused to keep quiet. All I can do now is focus on the positive, talk to my lawyer, and move forward. It will be painful, but I will do everything in my power to build a new future on my own terms, far away from these people. Stories number 2. My 27F best friend, 26F, turns out to be crazy and is ruining my wedding. Some background info about this girl, let's call her Jess. At this point in her life, she's kind of a hot mess. She's one of those people who airs everything on Facebook, who has a new love of my life every month, and a new best friend every few months. Her relationships and friendships usually end terribly, with both sides hating each other. How did I become being her best friend? Well, she hasn't always been this way. She was relatively normal 5 years ago when I met her, save for the normal, early 20s, drama. But in the last 2 years, she's lost her mom to cancer and her grandpa to old age, and she doesn't have any other family. She dropped out of school and found out her boyfriend at the time was cheating on her. After the breakup, I was acting like a shoulder to cry on since she had pretty much hit rock bottom. A few months later, she was telling everyone how close we were and started tagging me as her best friend. A few months ago, I got engaged. Unbeknownst to me, she started telling everyone she was my maid of honor, even though I've always planned on making my sister my maid of honor. But this was right after Jess' mom had died, so I just improvised and said I would have 2 maid of honors. It's still not what I would have liked, but I literally couldn't bring myself to tell this poor girl I don't consider her my best friend. That was my first mistake. About a month after I got engaged, she met a guy. 2 weeks later, she was engaged. A week later, she was married. A month later, she was divorced, separated. I don't know if it's legal yet. I don't know if anything was legal. But she changed her last name and is still going by that, so I'm guessing it was legal. Ever since the divorce, my own wedding planning has become unbearable. She is constantly telling me how marriage doesn't work, love can't save things, etc., etc. And criticizes how much I'm spending on my wedding when she had hers for a few hundred, Vegas wedding. It's gotten to the point where she's rude to the vendors I'm meeting with, but she gets really upset when I don't take her to meetings since she's the maid of honor. So I'm at the point where I just want to cut her out of the wedding, like I should have done in the first place. However, when I confessed this to a mutual friend, my friend let me know to be careful because Jess can be really vindictive. When she found out her ex from a few years ago was getting married, she tried to contact the bride and tell her he was cheating on her. He wasn't. One of her last besties was fired from her job because Jess made multiple email accounts and regularly contacted customer service complaining about her. And since she knows so much info about my wedding already, I'm really terrified that she'll somehow try to sabotage it. So basically, I don't know what to do at this point. I feel like this wedding is getting away from me, but I also don't know if it'd be less painful to keep her a part of it, because it would save me all the drama. I don't know what she's capable of, so I'm really worried that she'll somehow make everything harder for me if I don't just grin and bear it. Help. TLDR, girl I've been comforting through traumatic times turns out to be batshit crazy and now I think she's going to ruin my wedding if I don't go with the flow. Relevant comments. Commenters 1. To add, it might be a good idea to have passwords with your vendors to confirm your identity. Reply. Thank you for the advice. I was actually considering the passwords thing, but I don't know if that's taking things too far. I guess I'm kind of worried about vendors resenting me for being high maintenance. But I hear about bridezillas/momzillas/inlawzillas all the time, so hopefully this isn't the worst they've seen. Commenters 2. Jesus, just tell her, Jess. You knew him for 3 weeks before you married him. What in the ever-loving fuck did you think was going to happen? If I've only been seeing a girl for 3 weeks, I won't even poop with her in a half-mile radius. Reply. Seriously, the week before the wedding was everyone kindly saying, you sure? You've known him an awfully short time. And her responding, everyone's jealous because they can't be us. Yeah. Commenters 3. Sounds like you need to have a very uncomfortable talk with this girl. Tell her what you told us here and let her know her negative attitude has no place in planning your wedding. You're sorry things aren't working out for her, but she is not allowed to pile this stuff on you. Tell her that you cannot have her as a maid of honor, and since she seems to think so negatively about marriage you wouldn't expect her to do this. Up to you if you even let her attend the wedding as a guest. Reply. Oh my god, I haven't even thought about explaining how her negative attitude towards marriage could be the excuse for not having her in the wedding party. That sounds ridiculously logical, but I've been blinded by a flurry of crazy. Thank you. Update. Guys. This went full-blown crazy. Before I could have a conversation with Jess, she confronted me about it. Apparently the mutual I confided in let the whole story leak and a twisted, more dramatic version made its way back to Jess. Shit, meet fan. It was an hour or two of me trying to explain to Jess in a somewhat calm manner that I felt she had overstepped her boundaries and it was really taking a mental toll on me while she yelled about what a terrible friend I was and how she's tired of putting all of her faith in the wrong people, and how she was tired of trying her best to be a good maid of honor. I made the mistake of pointing out that I had never asked her to be my maid of honor in the first place, and she responded with, well then I must be delusional. The first step is admitting you have a problem, so. Progress. Needless to say, we aren't on speaking terms. Shortly after that I took all of your advice and called all of my wedding vendors and let them know that my fiancé and I were going to be the only people making any decisions, and set up a confirmation word with them. Apparently this shit happens a lot because nobody even asked why. I accidentally forgot to contact the bakery making our cake, but luckily they called me and asked if I was certain I wanted to cancel the wedding cake. Apparently there was a voicemail left on their machine. Wonder how that happened. Here's where things get really nuts. A few weeks after our blow-up she apparently met some guy who is the love of her life. A few weeks after that, they're engaged. I can't make this shit up. She did it again. Then our mutual friends get invitations for her wedding, which is the same date as mine. But since they had RSVP'd for my wedding, a lot of them couldn't make it. A few days before her wedding, they have to cancel because he's already married. And you know what? So is she. I guess she never got officially divorced from that first quickie wedding. So as far as I know, no wedding actually happened. I have no idea if they still plan to. I'm just glad to be away from that circus. But anyways, I got married a few weeks ago, everything was wonderful, the weather was great, and everyone present was a joy to be around, except maybe my uncle who gets a little too dance-y when he's drunk, but you know. Family, thank you to everyone who responded, and to everyone letting me know I'm not helping matters by going with the flow. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends, by running from crazy and not comforting it. Relevant comments. Commenters 1. Anyone else think the mutual friend is kind of shitty? She was the one who told OP to be careful about Jess, yet she decided it would be a good idea to blab about what OP told her, knowing full well it would get back to Jess. Now instead of telling Jess on her own terms OP got ambushed instead. Reply. I actually asked her about it a few days after the blow-up. Her defense was that she didn't actually tell Jess, she told another mutual friend of ours, who told someone else, who told someone else, who told Jess, so technically it wasn't her fault. Which is how by the time it got to Jess the story was somewhere along the lines of, OMG, Bubbles one is telling everyone you're ruining her life and sabotaging the wedding. All of us met at work, we all worked at the same restaurant long ago, and it was always a drama-filled place. A lot of the same people still work there and still thrive off of the drama. I'm thinking it's time for me to move on from that specific crowd. Cliques are fun in middle school. In your 20s, not so much. Commenters 2. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends, by running from crazy and not comforting it. I'd like to nominate the first candidate for your new policy, the mutual friend who somehow let the story leak and repeated to Jess a twisted, more dramatic version of what you had confided in her. Reply. I've decided to distance myself from that crowd. We're in different points in our lives, and I just don't find the gossiping all that fun. My real besties, from high school who were all bridesmaids, have all grown up and we would never pull this crap. Commenters 3. I bet Jess was never actually getting married this time. It was just a plot to ensure at least some of your friends didn't make your wedding. Reply. I suspect that as well, but since she's done it before I wouldn't be surprised if she actually went through with it. I'm assuming they were both trying to get divorced before the wedding and realized they wouldn't be able to in time, because you know, some stuff takes time and can't be erased in a jiffy, so they couldn't do it. I get the feeling this guy is either really stupid or just as crazy as she is, so at least they found each other. Stories number 3. Aita 4. Abandoning my niece because my sister wouldn't come and get her. My 19M sister, 26, still lives at home and likes to do this thing where she asks you to watch her daughter for 2 minutes while she runs to the bathroom, so she goes and then time keeps ticking away and 2 minutes turns into 15 minutes and she still isn't back. And you wonder what's taking her so long, so you go and bang on the door and then she finally comes out 20 minutes after she left. So basically she just uses it as an excuse when she's fed up of being with her kid. I know what she's doing when she asks for this, so I always say no, but she asked me this time and I said yeah because I wasn't doing anything anyway, but I did have to leave in 10 to 15 minutes and I told her that and she said she wouldn't be that long. I took for her word for it and just went and amused her daughter, too, for the time being. It was getting closer to the time I had to leave at and she still wasn't out, so I messaged her and she said she would be 1 minute. A minute passed and she still wasn't out, so I went up to the door and told her I had to go and I got no response, presumably because she was wearing NC headphones, either that or she was ignoring me lol. Didn't have time to wait, so I went back and told my niece to go and get her mom and I just left, and I could hear her crying and running after me as I was walking out the door. When I got back my sister was pissed and asked what was wrong with me and why would I just abandon her while she was crying like that, and I just said I had to go and I did tell her I had to be gone by a certain time. I felt a bit bad, but at the same time she's not my child. Stories number 4. My 30M partner, 30M, won't let me sleep and I don't know what to do. First off, I'll say I have sleep issues. I find it very difficult to get to sleep and stay asleep, despite taking medication for it, and when I finally do sleep I snore. I've tried so many fixes for this, nose strips, adjusting positions, spoken to many GPs about it, nothing's worked, I can't control it. My partner has taken to, instead of rolling me over, just losing his patience and kicking doors open, yelling, screaming, hitting the bed, to scare me awake. This has started a few months ago and was super infrequent but has now picked up and is happening multiple times a week now. I'm now having an even harder time getting to sleep, bedtime is giving me so much anxiety, my body is like, on a hair trigger now. I wake up at the slightest noise and never fully drift off anymore because I'm just expecting to be woken up in an extremely aggressive manner. I feel like I'm at the end of my tether. How do I get them to listen and just let me sleep? I mean, it's ridiculous to be scared of going to sleep when your partner is home, isn't it? I don't know what to do anymore. I can't just up and leave him because he's totally dependent on me financially and I don't have anywhere I could stay. We live paycheck to paycheck, it's not like I can just sleep somewhere else and still support us. He is so angry all the time now and I don't know how much longer I can be around him. I just want to be left alone to sleep in peace. TLDR, partner has started scaring me awake every time I snore and it's left me feeling unsafe to sleep while he's home. Comments. Commenters 1. You need to figure out how to leave him. Him being financially dependent on you is not your problem. That is a legitimate form of torture to deprive people of sleep in that manner. What an absolutely disgusting way to treat your partner. Commenters 2. This is abuse. And abuse always escalates. Considering how angry and violent he's already acting, I fear OP is in much more danger than he realizes. OP, time to pack your things and find somewhere safe to stay. Even a shelter until you find somewhere for just you is an infinitely better option than staying with him. Commenters 3. You need to request to be checked for sleep apnea. I am a 30-foot SF and just briefly reading your symptoms, it sounds like you have it. My doctor tried to yank me around for 2 years on a sleep study. Do not let them do that. You request it. If they won't, tell them you want that on your chart. You will feel amazing once you get the proper equipment to treat it. Update. I've never made an update to a post before, so I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, please let me know. I posted well over a year ago now, closer to 2 years at this point, about my sleep snoring issues causing aggression from my partner, and some people seemed really concerned for me in the comments, so I felt the need to update just so people know I'm okay. So, to update, not long after the post I sat down with him and explained how upsetting his behavior was and, he changed it. We aired our grievances, did some reflecting, and realized it was unsustainable, so implemented changes and it worked. Isn't it wild how communicating can fix problems? A lot of people wanted me to dump him and leave, but we have been together for years. I wanted to give it another try to see if we can find a solution. First change was sticking strictly to separate sleeping areas, and sleeping separately helped so much. Seriously, we are so much better rested in our own spaces and our sleep routines aren't being disrupted by each other. Also fun, sleepovers, with no sleeping. Sleep deprivation was making both of us crazy stressed out and we were not handling it well, him in particular. I've reached out to my GP since and am currently, still, on a waiting list for a sleep study to confirm sleep apnea, which is not ideal, but at least there's movement there. Love the NHS but don't love how long these wait lists take in my area. He also started therapy soon after my post and we found out that he's autistic, which we suspected before but didn't know what to do about. He got diagnosed and really dove into resources on the topic, and we've both learned so much about how to deal with it. He's done so much work on recognizing and coping with being overstimulated. Yeah, the loud snoring. Extra distressing for him with his sensory issues he didn't understand how to identify, and redirecting his anger into healthier outlets. He's now trying to get me to get assessed too. I'll say something like, "Where are the scissors?" The way this thread is hanging off my sleeve and touching my arm makes me want to peel off my skin, and he'll just hold up a book on autism and point at me like, which is fun. And on our financial situation I mentioned in my post, it flipped. He found a job and then I lost mine, so we're no better off on that front, but sleeping. And as a couple, we're doing so much better. I want to thank so many commenters on New York First Post for helping me realize it was not healthy or okay for either of us. We're still working on it, but we're in a much healthier, happier place. Thank you. Comments. Commenters 1. Separate sleeping spaces FTW. My husband moved to the spare room. Due to his snoring and incessant restless legs, he tore a hole in our lovely linen sheets just by moving his feet so much during the second lockdown where we live, and we've never looked back. It is honestly the most romantic thing he's ever done for me. It strengthened our marriage so much. It's hard to be your best self and love with your full heart when you can't sleep. Commenters 2. I'm confused why none of the original fixes tried were sleeping separately. When my boyfriend snores I don't scream and slam things, one of us moves to the sofa. Oh okay. We would move after being woken up. The change was starting to sleep in separate rooms entirely so he isn't being woken up by me in the first place. Instead of us both going to sleep in the same bed and him being woken up startled. Sorry for the confusion. Stories number 5. Am I wrong for being upset my GF of 8 years now wants sex? My GF and I have been together for 8 years, and we've never had sex. My GF has had some issues regarding sex. She's gone to a therapist, and she realized she may never want sex. I knew all of this beforehand, and I was willing to stay sexless, as she's a wonderful person. I've never pressured her for sex, and never expected it. It was hard for me at times though. Also, non-monogamy was never an option. Fast forward a few years, and my libido is completely gone. I don't do any sexual, I still hug and kiss my GF though. I don't even masturbate or watch porn anymore. Even if a sex scene comes up on a movie or TV, it does nothing for me. Any sex drive I ever has is gone. My GF recently tried to grab my crotch, and I pushed her away. I asked what is she doing, and she said she wants to try and start being sexual with me. We had a long talk about why she feels this way, and she says she can't really explain it. I told her I don't want to have sex, and she was disappointed. Things have gotten more tense between us, and the other day we has a fight. She says that I'm just doing this to punish her because she wouldn't have sex with me before. She says she doesn't believe me when I say my libido is gone. I'm just really frustrated with her now, because I was willing to give up sex to be with her and I never made her feel bad about it, and now she's upset with me. Am I wrong in this? Relevant comments. Commenters 1. She says she doesn't believe me when I say my libido is gone. What does she have to say about you being understanding of her issues regarding sex for the last 7 years? Sounds like main character syndrome. Ick man, but GL. Reply, she said it's different, because she had some trauma regarding sex, and that I've never been sexually assaulted. True. How he controls his sex drive. Reply, it's hard to explain how I did it. But anytime I felt horny I just did things like hitting myself or telling myself to stop several times. I did this because otherwise, I'd end up sexually frustrated. His girlfriend being dismissive and not accepting no as an answer. Reply, I get it, but it's really frustrating. I mean, I spent 8 years, and never once pressured her or got mad at her, and now that it's me who doesn't want sex, she picks fights and yells at me. Commenters 2, you're not wrong. No one is entitled to suddenly have sex. Especially when she said she was never going to have it. Now what's I'm curious and kinda sad about is you going years, almost a decade, without sex. Not BC you wanted to, but BC she didn't want to. And now BC she suddenly wants it, she expects you to just go along. Extremely selfish mentality for her to just think of you as a light switch to turn on and off for her own personal preferences. Geez, and she didn't even talk to you before grabbing you. Man, this situation sucks. Update. First post. We had a talk. I explained to her what I did to get rid of my libido. Basically I hit myself and told myself no when I got horny. She didn't know this. I never told her because I didn't want her to feel bad for not having sex with me. I didn't want to tell her, but she insisted on knowing why I don't have a libido anymore. She started crying when I told her. She said she was sorry she made me go through that. I told her it's not her fault, and that it was my choice. We just held each other for a while after that. We decided that we'd go to couples therapy, and when I'm ready, going to see a sex therapist. She said she's sorry for how she's been acting, and that she's willing to be patient with me. I asked her what happens if I never get my libido back. She said she doesn't know, but she said she will be patient with me, so yeah, I'll try to get my libido back. I don't feel comfortable discussing now, but something I'll want to mention during therapy is this pressure I'm getting from my GF. Like, maybe I'm overthinking, but I guess it feels like she's waiting for me to have sex. But when I decided to be with her I was more of the mind, I may never have sex again. I wasn't waiting for my GF to get better so we could have sex. I accept the fact that I could go sexless for the rest of my life. I guess this is a discussion for later. Edit. I think a lot of people are assuming I beat the shit out of myself. No, I didn't punch myself at full force. I slapped my thigh or my hand, or pinched myself whenever I got horny or tried to look at porn. I did not punch my dick, or balls. Relevant comments. Commenters 1. What was her reason for always denying you and now suddenly finding you desirable again? Reply, trauma. She went through some bad sexual trauma when she was younger. Emptiness_Nana, wow. I am sorry. This is a difficult path. Your girlfriend needs to change her mindset. You gave up sex, retrained your brain, accepted her exactly how she is. That is very noble of you. She needs to love you and accept you as you are. She says she will be patient. She owes minimum 8 years. Good luck on the therapy. I think that is an excellent idea. Update 2. It's been a long time since I posted, and things have changed a lot in the past few months. We did find a therapist for us, and one for myself. It was hard to open up. I felt like I wasn't allowed to be frustrated a good portion of the time. I did manage to open up to my GF. Honestly, it was a pretty arduous journey for us, but we are in a better place now. My GF recognized that she was wrong for pressure me into sex and grabbing me out of nowhere. I recognized I was wrong for my self-therapy when it came to killing my libido. We took small steps towards having sex. Eventually, we finally did. The first time we tried was a mess. Eventually though, it started to feel natural. We'll still go to therapy, but we are both in a much better place now, and we are having sex pretty consistently. I honestly didn't realize how much I missed it. Top comments. Commenter 1, well this was the best case scenario. Commenter 2, I'm glad you're doing better, and I truly hope that this is a healthier relationship than it sounded like in your previous posts. Commenter 3, honestly, this update is so refreshing to read. It's great to see a couple willing to work through tough issues together rather than just giving up. The fact that both of you took accountability, found therapy, and took small steps toward intimacy is really inspiring. Relationships are hard work, but it sounds like you're both stronger because of it. Wishing you both continued growth and happiness. Stories number 6. Aita 4, abandoning my niece because my sister wouldn't come and get her. My 19M sister, 26, still lives at home and likes to do this thing where she asks you to watch her daughter for 2 minutes while she runs to the bathroom, so she goes and then time keeps ticking away and 2 minutes turns into 15 minutes and she still isn't back. And you wonder what's taking her so long, so you go and bang on the door and then she finally comes out 20 minutes after she left. So basically she just uses it as an excuse when she's fed up of being with her kid. I know what she's doing when she asks for this, so I always say no, but she asked me this time and I said yeah because I wasn't doing anything anyway, but I did have to leave in 10 to 15 minutes and I told her that and she said she wouldn't be that long. I took for her word for it and just went and amused her daughter, too, for the time being. It was getting closer to the time I had to leave at and she still wasn't out, so I messaged her and she said she would be 1 minute. A minute passed and she still wasn't out, so I went up to the door and told her I had to go and I got no response, presumably because she was wearing NC headphones, either that or she was ignoring me lol. Didn't have time to wait, so I went back and told my niece to go and get her mom and I just left, and I could hear her crying and running after me as I was walking out the door. When I got back my sister was pissed and asked what was wrong with me and why would I just abandon her while she was crying like that, and I just said I had to go and I did tell her I had to be gone by a certain time. I felt a bit bad, but at the same time she's not my child. Stories number 7. Aita for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiancé. I've posted an update to this story. Hey everyone, I, 21F, cut contact with one of my closest childhood friends, Mary, 21F, a few weeks ago. While I feel relieved she's out of my life, most of my family and mutual friends think I overreacted, and now I'm starting to second-guess my decision. I'm going to put some rather irrelevant background information here. Mary and I practically grew up as sisters. We were neighbors, and our parents started arranging playdates for us before we could even walk. From kindergarten to secondary school, we did everything together. If I wasn't at her house, she was at mine. I trusted her completely and never thought of her as anything other than my best friend. Things changed when Mary moved away for university. At first, I missed her, but over time, I noticed how much easier my life felt without her constant presence. I wasn't being criticized, guilt-tripped, or forced to justify my choices anymore. It became clear how much control she'd had over me. Mary had a way of dominating every aspect of my life. She'd dismiss my hobbies and pressure me to quit them, and if she didn't like one of my friends, I'd have to cut ties. You could call me a pushover, but when you grow up with someone like that, it's hard to see the manipulation for what it is. Things really came to a head when I met my now fiancé, Dave, 27M. He's amazing, kind, supportive, and everything I've ever wanted in a partner. We clicked instantly, and he's honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. But, of course, Mary didn't approve. She immediately tried to plant seeds of doubt, saying he was too old, he'd cheat, or he was only using me. Thankfully, for once, I didn't listen to her, and I'm so glad I didn't. In December, Dave surprised me with a dream vacation, and during the trip, he proposed. Everything about it was perfect, he planned every little detail, and it was more magical than I could have ever imagined. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news with everyone. Naturally, I told Mary, expecting at least some excitement, but instead, she downplayed the entire thing. She nitpicked the proposal, saying how she would have done it differently and what could have been better. It stung, but I brushed it off and reminded her that it was my proposal, not hers. A few weeks later, we met in person for the first time in months. That's when things completely fell apart. Out of nowhere, Mary told me I should break up with Dave. When I asked why, her reasoning had nothing to do with me. Instead, she compared him to her boyfriend, Julian, 22M, saying things like, Dave makes more money than Julian, and Dave can give you everything, while I have to work for what I want. It was clear she wasn't concerned about me, she was just jealous. She couldn't handle the fact that, for once, my life seemed better than hers. That was the breaking point for me. I told her to leave my house, and afterward, I sent her a long message explaining how hurt and disappointed I was. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I didn't want her to contact me again. Since then, it feels like she's told everyone in our social circle. Mutual friends and even some family members have reached out, saying I was too harsh and should have handled things differently. They said, that's just how Mary is, you've known her your whole life. She's always been in the spotlight and gotten what she wanted. Some even accused me of breaking her heart and told me it was wrong to choose my fiancé over a lifelong friend. Even my mom said she expected better of me, and that's what's making me question my decision. Did I overreact? Mary has been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. Sure, she has her flaws, but we've also shared countless good times and memories. Am I throwing away years of friendship over this? Should I try to fix things, or was cutting her off the right choice? Since some people in the comments are claiming this story is fake, unfortunately, it's not. I obviously can't prove it to you, but honestly, what would be the point of making up a story and posting it on Reddit? I've never used Reddit before and have no idea what karma is or why anyone would want it. Also, yes, I let AI correct my text, mainly because I was incredibly angry when I wrote it and just kept rambling. English isn't my first language either. Combine these two things, and you can probably imagine that my original text was all over the place. For clarification, I don't know exactly what Mary told my friends and family since most of the messages I received were pretty vague. I also didn't ask my mom what Mary said had happened. I was too angry to have a calm conversation after my mom told me I was being dramatic, which led to me yelling at her. All I know is that Mary admitted to asking me to break up with my fiancé, but I don't know if she explained why she wanted me to. Lastly, my parents raised Mary like a second daughter, and she's always incredibly kind in front of them. I guess that's why they didn't believe me. Maybe they're just in denial because it's easier for them to handle. I don't know. But I get it, hearing something bad about someone you like for the first time can make you want to deny it. Update, Aita for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiancé. I've posted another update, for those who are interested. Quick sum up because the update is quite long. I visited my parents today and found out that Mary told them that Dave was cheating on me. My dad ended up believing me, but my mom is still on the fence and unsure of who to believe. Also, everything that's irrelevant to the update is put in italics, so if you're only interested in the update you can skip the italics part. I honestly didn't expect for so many people to read my post and to respond in such a positive way. Since some people asked for an update, which I also didn't expect, I'm going to explain what happened today. Also, just a quick heads up, this is probably going to be all over the place since a whole lot went down and I'm mainly writing this down to understand what exactly happened myself. But first of all, I want to thank everyone who was so kind to share their own stories. It was honestly incredibly mind-blowing to see how many people went through the same thing that I did, and still do, and hearing that cutting contact with their toxic friends was the right thing to do, made me even more sure about my own decision. To all those of you who were calling my post fake, AI, or karma farming, whatever that even means, I'm sorry to disappoint, but it's sadly not any of those things. This is something that's currently happening and I needed to get off my chest. I'm glad that you've never had to go through something like that, but judging by the comments, my story isn't as unusual/unique as I thought and as far-fetched as some of you might think. People often have toxic and narcissistic friends in their lives, especially when people around them have enabled their behavior from a young age, as in Mary's case. I'm also not going to have AI correct my grammar/spelling mistakes this time, so buckle up for some fun sentences. Also, if someone knows any good websites that can correct whole sentences, not just autocorrect, but also grammar and stuff, please tell me which ones there are. Me dealing with technology I've never used before is an absolute shitshow. There's a reason why I'm studying law and not something IT related, lol. I originally didn't want to talk about/justify my relationship, it's simply not what my post is about directly or an issue that I'm currently facing, but I've decided to address it anyway. Why? I don't know, but there were a handful of people in the comments calling my fiancé a pedophile/rapist, or saying that he groomed me, and so on. Most of these comments seem to be coming from a place of concern, which I'm thankful for, but some didn't. So yeah, that's probably why I've decided to explain some things. I wasn't groomed, love-bombed or anything like that. My fiancé is an amazing guy who never forced me to anything or rushed me into marriage, like some comments suggested. I'm marrying him because he's the one I want to spend my future with. Of course, we could have waited a few more years with getting engaged/married, eventually, but what's the point in waiting when I'm, and he too, obviously, sure that he's the right person for me. Marrying at a young age, I'm going to be 23 when we're officially getting married. BTW, isn't for everyone, but it's also not uncommon. With some people you simply have a feeling that it's going to work out great, and when it comes to him, I have that. Some other people also suggested that my parents took Mary's side because they don't like Dave, which couldn't be further from the truth. They love him dearly and have considered him part of the family after a few months of us dating. I'd really appreciate if people who are considering commenting solely on my relationship would refrain from it. It's not what this post is about, it's not the main focus, and I'm set on my decision to be with him. You can think whatever you want about my relationship, but at the end of the day, you don't know either of us or what our relationship is like. But now on to the actual update. We visited my parents around noon today, talked about everything, and tried to understand what had happened exactly. Turns out, Mary really was telling a made-up story while sprinkling in some truth here and there. Apparently she told people, or at least my parents, that Dave was cheating on me with a coworker of his, which is why she told me to break up with him. She said that this affair had been going on for at least 4 months and that she knows about it because she'd seen them together at a cafe in a different city a few months ago. Let's assume this would be true, why didn't she inform me or my parents sooner? Like, imagine your best friends, back then, boyfriend is cheating on her and you know about it, wouldn't you tell her right away? This is also why I can't understand why my parents, especially my mom, would believe her in the first place. According to her story, I got incredibly mad, kicked her out, and haven't spoken to her since. Now, some of it is true as you should know from my original post. For one, her telling me to break up with my fiancé, as well as, me kicking her out and cutting contact. However, the whole story about Dave cheating on me is something I've heard about for the first time today, plus it's completely made up. Just to remind you, she told me to break up with him because Dave's a better boyfriend than Julian, her boyfriend. By the way, I also feel so sorry for him. I can't imagine how much she must push him around. My mom said that she didn't believe Dave was cheating on me, but was disappointed in me for how I handled the situation, especially since I couldn't have known if Mary wasn't telling the truth. She thought that cutting off my best friend for being concerned about me was too harsh and that we should have talked it out. I've also assumed that she's scared to lose longtime friends when I cut contact with Mary, which also turned out to be true. Mary told her mother what happened, who just so happened to be best friends with my mom, and according to my dad, Mary's mother is mad at me for treating her daughter badly and accused my mom of not raising me right. So there's that as well. After my mom explained what Mary had told her, I went on to tell her what really went down. The jealousy, the manipulation, the lies, all of it, basically the things I've said in my original post plus much more. She didn't believe me at first and said that I was blowing things out of proportion, that Mary had good intentions but simply didn't know how to communicate them well. I showed her some text messages between Mary and me, told her about past incidents, and my fiancé tried to back me up as best as he could since my mom wasn't listening at all and kept defending Mary. To say that I dug deep and told my parents about all sorts of things is an understatement. I even went as far as telling them about a sex incident, so yeah, I didn't leave out any details. My dad believed me from the get-go, but my mom kept going back to how great of a person Mary is and how she just wants the best for me. She also kept saying how I've never had an issue with Mary in the past, not true, and that I'm now creating unnecessary drama because of a misunderstanding. Maybe I'm creating unnecessary drama, maybe not. In my opinion it's necessary, though. I've let her do whatever she wanted for far too long. At some point my dad simply told her to shut up and to stop making excuses for Mary, so at least I have one parent on my side. My dad's always been a very non-confrontational person and never really stood his ground, especially when it came to my mom, but I found out that he thought that Mary didn't have a good influence on me growing up. He apparently also told my mom that he wanted to limit the contact between Mary and me when we were younger, but my mom didn't see his point and let our friendship continue. So basically, this whole issue could have been avoided if my mom would have put her friendship with Mary's mother aside for her own family. Great. In the end, my mom said that she'd speak to Mary and ask her if what I've said is true, which honestly pissed me off. After everything I've told her, she still wants to crawl to Mary because apparently, what her actual daughter says isn't good enough. She tried to justify it since Mary is her daughter too, and it's unfair to just hear out my side of the story, alright? But you already had a heartfelt conversation with Mary in which she was lying to you completely. After she said all of that, we started a screaming match. I know, not healthy, but it honestly felt so damn good to just let it all out. To say that I cried heavily out of frustration after talking to my mom is an understatement, and I'm so glad that my fiancé was with me because I sure as hell wouldn't have been able to drive home safely. But, on a good note, I got ice cream and we watched my favorite show when we arrived back home, which made things better, lol. I've not told my mom that I'm considering not inviting her to my wedding. We're not planning to get married until next year anyway, so there's still enough time for her to make up her mind about who she'd rather believe, plus I don't want to create too big of a rift between me and her. As for mutual friends who took Mary's side, I've decided not to respond to them. I'm not sure if Mary told them the same story that she told my parents, but I honestly don't care. I don't want to see Mary ever again, or at least not in the foreseeable future, and mutual friends would make that a whole lot harder than it needs to be. Besides, they're not my only friends or close friends of mine. Dave's also okay with me not running after them to clear his name. If this whole situation should leave this friend group and turn public, I'm going to contact them, but right now, we don't see a point in dealing with Mary's minions. That's something someone called these friends in the comments below my original post. Loved it. Right now I'm just hoping that Mary messes up her story somehow and that my mom is going to see her for who she really is. While she's been acting absolutely disgusting towards me and basically chooses Mary over me in this situation, I think that I can look past this. It's my mom after all. Cutting off friends is one thing, but cutting off close family, that's a whole different story, and I'll try to mend things the best I can. If she's going to stay loyal to Mary, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's not something I have to think about right now. Once again, thank you for your positive and helpful comments. I've read all of them, but they kept coming in at a rapid speed and I didn't really know how to respond to most. Also, for those who went through something similar, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, and I'm incredibly glad that, as far as the comments go, all of you could find peace in your decision to cut toxic friends out of your lives. Update 2, Aita for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiancé. I just want to say this in advance, I don't know if my dad was telling the full truth. I do believe him, but he might have exaggerated or left things out. It's entirely possible that he lied to a certain extent. I personally don't think that, but then again, most of the things he told me yesterday, I've heard about for the first time and they make him seem incredibly innocent. Maybe he was lying. I don't know. This whole situation just makes me question who I can trust in general. So, we had dinner with my dad last night and it went pretty well overall. We mainly talked about my mom and Mary. Apparently my mom had always been concerned about what others thought about her, but when she met Mary's mother, it reached a whole new level. Mary's mother often criticized my mom for all sorts of things, her parenting style, her clothes, her house, you name it. Whenever it was something that my mom could change, she changed it immediately to appease Mary's mother. That's also why I was put into dance classes when I was younger, because Mary's mother signed Mary up for dance classes, one of many examples. So yeah, as most comments suggested, she's being pushed around by Mary's mom. Is she a narcissist? I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. One thing to know about Mary's family is that they do a damn good job at appearing perfect. Happy family, nice jobs, nice house, etc. I guess my mom bought their persona and tried to copy it. I'm not going to trash talk the whole family here, but let's just say that they have just as many flaws as any other family. Also, my mom was apparently talking shit about me to my dad. comparing me to Mary in basically every way, and she even said multiple times that she wished Mary was her real daughter. She also believes that I took away her chance to live her dream life. Fun fact, but according to my dad, my mom's apparently huge on family. She always wanted to have at least 4 children, ironic, I know. She had a pretty traumatic birth experience with me and doctors told her that she shouldn't try for children again. Yeah, apparently she's blaming me for that. She then hoped that she'd get to live her dream through me, basically that I have a lot of children. Bit of TMI right here, but I've mentioned it in the comments a few times already, so whatever, I can't get pregnant, like at all, which means she, luckily, won't get any grandchildren from me. I guess she sticks so close to Mary and Mary's mother because she hopes to be a grandma to Mary's potential children. That's honestly so creepy and messed up in my opinion, but well, we're talking about my mom here. I also feel the need to clarify that I didn't know any of that. My mom never said anything negative about me to my face. Sure, there were some comparisons here and there, but nothing major or something that had an impact on me. It's always been just general stuff that parents tend to do, comparing grades, behavior, skills, etc. She's also never directly blamed me for her inability to have any more children and never said anything bad about me not being able to conceive. This is all just stuff she apparently said behind my back. She's always been pretty alright to me. She most definitely wasn't the best mom ever, but she wasn't horrible either, just a person who, in my opinion, shouldn't have had a child in the first place. My dad also admitted that he'd considered divorcing her a few times, but never went through with it because he was scared that my mom would get primary custody. He's currently considering it again, so let's see how that goes. As for why he never stood up to my mom, he genuinely didn't have a reason for it. He knew that my mom's never said anything like the things above to my face, so he didn't think that he should tell me, at least not until I moved out. He didn't engage in these type of conversations with my mom and kept telling her to stop every time, which caused a lot of fighting between them. I knew that their marriage was messed up, but I always thought this had different reasons. Also, my mom reached out to my mother-in-law and complained about Dave, how he changed me and stuff, referring to me cutting off Mary and choosing my fiancé over my best friend. My MIL, who's an absolute angel BTW, simply asked her why she's discussing this with her since Dave and I are adults. There's no need to contact her for it. My mom also told her that Mary said that Dave is cheating on me. She then simply told my mom, sounds like Mary's projecting, and hung up. I'm honestly so pissed that my mom tried to involve her in this situation and I can't help but wonder if she tried to create conflict between my MIL and my fiancé. Maybe she genuinely believes Mary and wanted to warn my MIL, but I guess that would be wishful thinking. For some background, my MIL was a single mom because her ex-boyfriend, Dave's father, cheated on her shortly after giving birth. As you might be able to imagine, she hates cheaters with a burning passion and my mom obviously knew that. So yeah, I guess my mom talked to Mary who doubled down and my mom decided to believe her. I was expecting that this would happen, but honestly, I'm really disappointed. I'm not even sad, angry, or anything, just absolutely disappointed, and confused. I'm currently considering sending her one last text before cutting her out for now, but I don't know if I should give her the pleasure of receiving an explanation. I'm still on the fence about cutting ties with her in general, mainly for my dad's sake. Their marriage is rocky already and although he's considering divorcing her I'm not sure if he'll actually go through with it. Keeping in contact with one parent while not talking to the other one must put a whole lot of stress on the parent you're still in touch with, and I quite honestly don't want to worsen my dad's home life any further. It's so crazy how I've lost so many people, who I considered important to me, in such a short amount of time. This whole situation also made me question other people, like my dad, a whole lot. There were so many people in my life throughout all those years and nobody said anything. Why didn't my grandparents step in? Or my aunt? Or family friends? I can't imagine that they didn't know about any of it, but then again, I didn't either. I also have no idea why I never noticed that my mom held some sort of resentment towards me, shouldn't I was noticed. I mean, I've been living with her under one roof for 18 years, yet I never noticed/imagined that she actually doesn't like me. Also yes, Reddit became my new diary, lol. Stories number 8. Just found out why my son's friend keeps asking me to be her mom. So he's in his first year of school and totally bonded with a girl. I mean they are literally kindred spirits and it's adorable. They're both about 3.5. Anyway she always asks for hugs from me specifically, cries when I leave drop off, needs attention and love, all of which I'm totally cool with because she's sweet and adorable and honestly I just love kids, I'd do it for any of them. For the last few weeks she's been saying I'm her mom, again kids are kids and I didn't think much of it. Like oh don't be silly. Etc. Today I said you have a mom. Just kind of talking after she said I was hers and she says no I don't my mom lives in heaven. My heart fucking broke, This poor little girl wanted a mom in her life, made friends with my kid and latched onto me, and I didn't recognize it until she said that. I told her she still has a mommy even if she lives in a different place, and don't worry, you have so many friends who love you and I know your mom is happy. I cried on the way home. Just feels like I want to scoop her up and be her mom, but obviously that isn't an option. My son doesn't have a dad, so I've always feared those emotions but didn't recognize it coming from a kid who's not mine. I hope she knows how great she is. Edit, y'all are so nice, but I'm not going after her dad, lol. I barely have time to shower, let alone develop a romantic relationship. Stories number 9. Aita for no longer giving support to my wife's family after I became successful with my own company after they talked down about me. My early 30s, wife, mid-20s, grew up in a fairly poor environment. Her grandpa had money, but her mom didn't and her sister doesn't. My wife has an incredibly strong work ethic, she's probably more so defined as a workaholic. When I first met her, I was in trucking, making about 50k, 70k/year. Since then I developed a niche for a specialty marketing field and became very good at it. All my friends encouraged me to go into business for myself with a marketing company. My wife was fully supportive of this, even after we discussed the financial difficulties we would have for the first year or so due to a limited budget. I made sure she knew that some months, I may not get a check from the business, my salary is paid monthly. Her family, however, were not. They accused me of neglecting my family, being lazy, not wanting to work, etc. They would constantly be bringing up the fact that I didn't have a job because I was always home, working remote. She would defend me, but they would ignore it and continue to call me lazy and a deadbeat for putting my daughter in daycare while I worked from home. I was still driving a truck part-time to have steady, reliable income, but it was only half of what I was making on a good week. In the last year, however, I have grown my income from my business beyond what I was making in trucking, and have very little overhead. Since we cut costs back when I first started, we realized a lot of things we were paying for, we could do without or found other alternatives, and we never really added those expenses back, so it's like we have significantly more money now. I still drive a semi occasionally for a friend who owns his truck, mainly to keep my CDL active and stay knowledgeable in the industry as a fallback. Her family has taken note, and they are constantly asking to go out to eat with us, hang out with us, etc. Then get mad when I never pay for the meals, the outing, the vacation, etc., aside from my part of the tab, obviously. Looking back, I understand why they never had money, they were living well beyond their means, but if it makes them happy then it is what it is. I let my wife do whatever she wants with her money, which sometimes includes buying stuff for her family, which I support her doing with her money if that's how she wants to spend it, but I make sure that she knows I don't want a dime of my money going to her family, since they were very unsupportive of what made us our money and would go as far as to talk down about me for doing what lead to our money. Stories number 10. Am I the jerk for calling the cops on my aunt who stole my car for a family vacation? Fixed period. Am 19 years old, my aunt has always been somewhat unpredictable. One summer morning, I woke up to find my car missing. Panic set in as I had no idea where it could be. After a frantic search, I received a text from my saying she had taken my car for a family vacation and would be back in a week. I was furious. She had not asked or even hinted that she needed it. My car was my pride and joy, not to mention my only means of transportation. I tried calling her, but she not pick up. Days turned into a blur of frustration and worry. I no idea where she was or what she was doing with my car. I felt helpless and angry. Finally, I decided enough and called the police to report it stolen. A few days later, the police found her in a small town enjoying a vacation with some friends. She was arrested and charged with theft. The court sentenced her to 1 month in jail. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, but I felt it was necessary to set boundaries and show that her actions had consequences. The whole situation left me feeling conflicted. On one hand, I felt guilty for putting my aunt in jail. Was family, after all. On the other hand, I knew I had to stand up for myself and my property. It was a harsh lesson for both of us, but it ultimately strengthened my resolve. Stories number 11. To fool by telling my partner I was pregnant. I, 21F, have been in a relationship with my very beautiful lovely girlfriend, 20F, for 4.5 years, and I love her dearly. Only thing we've agreed on since the beginning was neither of us, adamantly, wanted kids. For storytelling purposes, she's trans and hasn't had GRS. I have PCOS, and can often go months without bleeding. Currently, I have gone almost 6 months without a single period. Insane, right? We don't really do penetrative sex, so pregnancy isn't really something I'm too worried about, but my doctors are very useless, and every time I've asked for some kind of treatment to help with PCOS symptoms, they've basically just told me to do a pregnancy test if I'm not bleeding, even though I tell them there's not chance of it. What doesn't help as well is I'm extremely paranoid and prone to nightmares about SA, so if I go a few months without a bleed, I do a pregnancy test, partly to satisfy my paranoia, and partly so if I go back to the doctor for help, I can have a, see, I did the dumb test and I'm not pregnant. Anyway, I used a different brand than normal this time around, and to my absolute horror, a strong, blue line appeared. I was horrified. Shaking, crying. I felt like my whole world ended and I wanted to just vomit. I had so many, how could this have happened thoughts and was imagining the horror on everyone's faces when I told them, my parents, my peers who don't even know my GF is trans so they'd have questions, and more imminently, how do I tell my partner? It was 1 a.m., and I spammed her with messages telling her to call me ASAP. She very sleepily calls me and asks what's wrong, and I shakily tell her I'm pregnant. We're both bolt awake and panicking, wondering how in the hell this happened. I'm inconsolable. And then I check the picture again. There's 2 boxes, test very clearly indicated that a line in both the big box and the small box means pregnancy. One line in the little box is just the control zone. There wasn't even a hint of a line on the larger box. I was not even a little pregnant TUG. Cue my poor GF having to comfort me for the next half an hour as I slowly stopped shaking, and many embarrassed apologies from me about fucking up this hard lol. This is still a better problem to have than a baby TUG, lol. Edit, I said in paragraph 1 that she is trans. Next person who comments per how do you get preg if both girls is getting put in timeout. TLDR I incorrectly told my GF I was pregnant because I can't fucking read. Whoops. Stories number 12. Entitled neighbor called police to my parents' house for my husband hunting on their land. My parents are retired and live in a little house on about 7 acres of land. It's not a big plot of land but it's cozy and private, just outside of town, and about 6 acres are woods with a creek running through the center of the woods. It's really a very beautiful piece of ground. With the woods and creek they get lots of animals going through, including deer. A couple years ago for Christmas we got my parents a few trail cams so they can see what all is going through. My mom likes photography and she's been able to get lots of photos of deer, foxes, wild turkeys, coyotes, and other wildlife going through their yard. As you may imagine, this is some prime hunting land. My husband occasionally enjoys hunting and has from time to time gone down there for deer season but he doesn't do it frequently. My parents have had several people stop and ask them to hunt their land and they always say no. Frankly it's just barely big enough to legally hunt and they don't want people all over their property all the time hunting. They have no problem anytime my husband wants to hunt, which is not often, but he's family. There is a neighbor who lives down the road who badly wants to hunt on my parents' land and has been told no repeatedly, they don't allow hunting. Last year my husband was in the woods and found a tree stand installed that wasn't his. Unfortunately when they checked the trail cams, the SD cards had been removed. No proof it's that neighbor, but they suspect him. My parents travel a lot so it would be really easy to do without their knowledge. My husband took the tree stand down and I believe the cameras were replaced with new ones that don't need SD cards. Last month before deer season started the neighbor again asked my parents to hunt and they said no, they don't allow hunting except their son-in-law if he wants to hunt. My husband decided he'd try and get a deer this year for deer season so he got a deer permit and went on the first day of deer season. He shot a decent-sized buck within 10 minutes of getting in the woods. My dad was awake and heard the shotgun blast and came out to see if my husband needed help. My husband got the deer field dressed then my dad, who is the nicest guy you'd ever meet, got his tractor out of the garage and drove it to the woods, scooped up the deer in the bucket and put it in the bed of my husband's truck. So hunting ended pretty quickly into deer season this year. About an hour later, a county sheriff's deputy and a game warden show up at my parents' house. Said they received a complaint of unauthorized hunting and deer poaching. The officer said the neighbor, actually gave his name, called and said they had been told repeatedly there was no hunting allowed on that ground. They had seen someone go into the woods with a shotgun, heard a shot, and then someone with an orange tractor picked up the deer and put it in the bed of a black pickup truck. In our state if you are caught poaching, they can confiscate your firearm, any hunting gear you have with you, and any vehicles used in the course of hunting/poaching. So the neighbor was really hopeful that they'd take my husband's gun, truck, and my dad's tractor. My dad said, "This is my house and my land. And the orange tractor is mine. The black truck belongs to my son-in-law who has permission to hunt here anytime he wants." My husband produced his valid deer tags and all was good. Also, screw that neighbor who had to be watching the woods with binoculars. There's no way he could have seen all that from his yard otherwise. Stories number 13. Aita for not visiting my Vietnamese sister because she had a baby with a black man. My sister, 22F, and I, 18F, have always had a strong bond. In Vietnam sisters are often very close to each other, we grow up even in the same bed, which I know is different from other countries like USA. But now everything is such a mess and I feel so stuck in the middle of it. She's always been bold, especially compared to our parents and the traditional behavior expected of women here in Vietnam. She is the kind of bold that makes my parents angry but also makes me admire her. She went to university in Ho Chi Minh and loved the freedom there. She started dressing more modern, speaking more confidently, and doing what she wanted. I always thought she was so brave and looked up to her for being her own person. Then she met a man. He's black and from America, here teaching English. She kept their relationship a secret for a long time, but when she finally told me about him I could tell she was in love. But I also knew what this would mean for our family. In Vietnam, people can be closed-minded. It's not just about race, it's about what people will say, what the neighbors will think, what extended family will gossip about at every gathering. My parents are very traditional, and I knew this would break our family apart. When my sister got pregnant, she kept it hidden as long as she could, but eventually she had to come forward and everything just exploded. My parents were furious and they outcast her straight away. They yelled about how she was ruining the family's name and how people would judge us forever. My mom cried for days, saying things like, "How could she do this to us?" My dad was cold. He didn't yell as much, but the way he stopped speaking to her hurt even more. He completely withdrew. My sister didn't back down, though. She said she was keeping the baby, that she loved her boyfriend and didn't care what anyone thought. My parents told her if she wanted to ruin her life, she couldn't do it under their roof, and if she left they would withdraw all financial support. So, she left. It's been a year now. She had her baby boy. I've seen pictures, and he's beautiful. My sister happy, or at least she says she is, but I can tell she misses us. And I know financially she is struggling without my parents' support. She doesn't say it outright, but I hear it in her voice when we talk. She still calls me sometimes, even though I have to sneak around to answer because my parents don't want me talking to her. I feel stuck. I love my sister, and I miss her so much. But I also feel guilty. I didn't stand up for her when everything went down. I just stayed quiet while she was kicked out, and now I don't know how to fix things. I try to bring her up to my mom, but she shuts me down every time. She made her choice, she says. My dad won't even mention her name. I've been saving my allowance to take a bus to Saigon to visit her. My dad overheard me on the phone to her planning to come and see her, her boyfriend and my baby nephew. My dad confronted me and told me if I go to see her, I won't be welcome back home. I depend on my parents for support and without them I wouldn't know where to go, but how can I turn my back on my sister also? It isn't right of me to have to pick a side like this. And I feel like a coward for still taking support from my parents while my sister struggles alone. I just wish people could see through color and didn't care what everyone else thinks so much. Stories number 14. I don't love my kid and his existence ruined my life. When I was 18, I got really drunk at a house party with my cousins. I passed out in the garden and they carried me into one of the bedrooms and they continued partying downstairs. A couple of hours later I was woken up by a random girl I've never seen in my life before and I could feel she was taking off my pants. I was just too drunk to react, to be honest. Everything was spinning and I was going in and out of this drunken sleep. Next time I woke up she was on top of me. That's what woke me up. I don't know why I didn't say anything or pushed her away. It's a mistake that now follows me forever. As I already said, she didn't know me and I didn't know her, so 5 weeks later I was told by a friend that a girl is asking people who were at the party for my contact. And when she got my number from someone, she informed me she was pregnant. I come from an ethnic household, there was absolutely no way I was going to tell my parents. I was terrified that they will force me to be with her. That was the end of our communication until 6 months after the child was born. She told me that she wants me to come see the child. So basically I did everything to appease her and not get her angry just so that she doesn't tell my family. She handed me the kid and I felt disgust. I felt this impending feeling of doom. I didn't feel absolutely anything positive towards this kid, and I know what most people would immediately say, go get a paternity test. I was thinking about it for a long time, but as the kid got older it just can't be denied that he's mine. He looks exactly like me and I'm also disgusted by that. I feel robbed. I wanted to fall in love, get married and have a child with my wife that I intended to have, but even if it didn't happen like that, even if it was an accident, I would definitely feel different if it was a girl I was interested in and actually wanted to sleep with her. Fast forward, she started getting more and more pushy about me telling my parents. She would message me a couple of times a week telling me it's time to tell my parents, and if I don't she will find out who they are and tell them. So, I told them when the kid was 5. Of course they were shocked, but they were more concerned about seeing the child. Eventually they established a relationship with her parents because it was clear that I won't keep bringing him there, and now the kid is coming over to their house every 2 weeks. I moved 2 hours away from their town because every time the kid was there they would force me to interact and shove him into my face. They don't understand how much pain his existence is causing me. I don't want him. I never wanted him. I tried talking to them and explain why I feel this way, but they just keep repeating, doesn't matter how it happened, he's yours and this is not his fault. I know it's not his fault. But I can't change how I feel. Whenever he's mentioned I just feel this sinking feeling in my stomach. Especially when I'm having a good time and someone mentions him and I get reminded of his existence, my day is immediately ruined. Now I'm 31 and I still feel the same. I usually call my parents before visiting to make sure he's not there, because I don't want to see him and I don't want them to force interaction. That's my confession. Stories number 15. I, 19M, got someone pregnant. Over the New Year's, I had a senseless hookup. I invited someone over from a ways away, and we kind of kicked it off at first. She stated she had an IUD, so I thought that we'd be in the clear. After a few days with her I knew that we wouldn't be a good match, and we parted ways. 2 weeks later, she texted me telling me she's pregnant, and is kind of leaning towards keeping the child, said she'd have an answer by the end of the week. I honestly don't know where to go from here on out. I'm a student, work part-time, etc. I feel like having a kid would ruin my life. It's a shitty thing to say, but truth be told I am not in a mental state where I could even handle a relationship, let alone a child. I know that I need to focus on my mental health, and my schoolwork before I can let anyone else inside of my life. I feel extremely lost, disappointed in myself, anxious, etc. What do I do, and how do I progress in life at this point? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Please don't flood comments stating negative things like, you need to grow up, you took that risk, etc. Stories number 16. Eldest sister got pregnant by my other elder sister's boyfriend. Around 10 years later, their cracks are starting to show. I, 26M, come from a pretty big family. My parents came to America from Europe when they were in their early 20s. After settling in, they had 6 kids total. This is about my older 2 sisters. When I was 15, my sister Joy, 27F, started dating Tim, 30M. The family really liked Tim. He was funny, kind, and had a promising future. I saw how much Joy loved him and how loving he was to her back. Everyone saw how much their love was strong, or at least we thought. When I was 16, I was watching the Disney Channel with my younger sister since she was 6 at the time and it was nighttime on a Friday. Suddenly, I saw Joy pass by and slammed the door to her room. Joy never ever slammed doors, even when she was in a bad mood. Before I could get up, my parents came in and told my younger sister to go play or watch TV somewhere else. After she left, my parents sat down and started talking. Earlier that day, Joy was at her part-time job on her break at her part-time job when her friend told her something shocking. Our older sister, Jessica, 29F, was pregnant and came out of a doctor's office with Tim. Curious, her friend followed them and saw them make out in the car. The friend took photos and a video of them and showed them to Joy. After learning this, it took a few seconds for it to sink in. My mom looked like she was about to cry while they told me while my dad barely made eye contact. To say the fallout was massive is an understatement. Jessica came back from work one day for dinner, she lived with a friend to be closer to her college. That's when my parents confronted her about her pregnancy with Tim. After denial, Jessica admitted she was pregnant with Tim's baby. They had been meeting up secretly for 5 months before she got pregnant. Joy started to sob and scream at Jessica at how she could do this to her. My older brother Jacob, 30M, started yelling too. I just sat back since I didn't know what to do. After what felt like an hour, Jessica packed the rest of her belongings and left. After a week, she contacted me and said if we were still good. She was mistaken that my silence meant I was going to have a relationship with her still. I just told her I didn't want anything more to do with her and blocked her. In a previous post, I said Jessica contacted me a while ago about how Tim was pissed about their recent gender reveal. After the fallout, Jessica married Tim and had their first daughter and another daughter in the summer of 2023. She's now pregnant with another daughter. Tim is pissed because he wanted a son. Then, just yesterday, Jessica's MIL contacted me through Facebook if it was true Joy and her husband, Alex, 30M, were having a baby boy. They are. I didn't respond until my wife, 25F, started to get harassed. I told Jessica's MIL to leave my wife out of this. I don't know why she wants to know why Joy and her husband are having a boy, but I'm not hopeful it's for any good intentions. Stories number 17. Aita for no longer talking to my 24F sister, 21F, and not wanting her at my wedding over how she treats my BF, 27M. I, 24F, have been with my boyfriend Z, 27M, for nearly 4 years now. After talking about this last year, we decided we're at a point in our relationship where we want to get married. With that in mind, I've been thinking a lot about my younger sister X, 21F. I haven't talked to X since early December, and don't have any plans to given the things she has said and done, mostly about and to my BF. I think it's important to give some context, because it's not just about the most recent events, and rather about her generally since the beginning of my relationship. When I started dating Z, my family was going through a tough time. My family company was struggling, and we had some health issues in the family, cancer. I met my BF in the middle of me essentially dropping out of college to come home and help deal with all these issues. In every way possible, he became my rock. He was there for me, he supported me, etc., in ways that my family had not done so. Mostly, because they were busy dealing with their own shit too. My parents were largely absent, traveling a lot for work, and my younger sister X also had her own life. But I noticed that while when I first moved back, she didn't care much about spending time with me, as soon as I started dating my BF, she would complain about him a lot. She was very critical of him, and would be very rude to him. She outright told me I shouldn't date him, and that he was like an animal. She'd call him stupid, and would tell me I was settling. The crazy thing is there was zero reason for her to hate him so much. He was and still is a gentleman in every way. I like to say he's chivalrous without ever being misogynistic. He's kind, caring, protective, smart, hardworking, etc. When I was the college dropout, he had a full-time high-paying job right after having graduated from a top 20 university in the US. In many ways, he would have been the one to be settling. Fast forward 6 months into us dating, my parents decided to move. And since I was living with them at the time, I would have had to move with them and my sister too. In the end, it was early in the relationship but I loved Z enough that I stayed and moved in with him. Also important to note that though it was early, due to some other issues, his job supported us both more than mine so we'd split the bills 60/40ths. When this happened, I know my sister resented me for it. She had even mentioned us two moving in together, but she had no job and my parents didn't want to just pay for her rent in a more expensive state when it made more sense for her to go with them. Throughout all of this Z was super kind to X, who stayed with us for like 3 weeks while my parents traveled before moving. When the holidays came around that year, X made a huge deal that Z would come join my family's New Year's. She kept saying how he shouldn't come, and she didn't want him there. This very obvious hatred she had for him did get better. In fact, a year ago we went to my parents for Thanksgiving and she'd made jokes about him being her big bro. I was happy it seemed she was coming around, until just recently. She came to town to visit, not just me but her old friends since she used to live where I live now with Z. And while she was here, in one conversation we were all talking about therapy and Z opened up about him starting therapy. One of the main things he talked about was healing from a past abusive relationship, where his ex used to slap him and push him and essentially physically abuse him. Of course, for a long time he didn't really recognize it as abuse since there's so much stigma around men suffering from DV. Anyway, he did mention in this conversation how he finally left his ex when it got bad enough that he hit her back after years of enduring her abuse. It's obviously a very fucked up situation and he said right away how no matter what he crossed the line too. I thought that although the conversation was sensitive, that X was at least empathetic of what he went through. However, since that trip, X has only gotten worse towards Z. She is now telling family, friends, and even my parents that she thinks Z is a psychopath who's controlling and abusing me. This couldn't be further from the truth. Thankfully, everyone who knows me and knows Z recognizes that this is not true, but I also can only imagine all the people who I'm not as close with that she's telling this to. She claims he's always been crazy, and she even refused to join our family holidays with my parents because she fears for her life. I basically have not talked to her since first finding out she's been spreading these lies to people who know us. My parents have tried confronting her but she's the kind of person who breaks out crying hysterically when confronted. She has also been confronted by them about lying and making up other things, e.g. she lied about being in university to numerous friends when she currently works at the mall. Overall, it's hard to figure out how to move forward. I love my sister but I can't see myself having a relationship with her when she's disrespected my boyfriend and myself so terribly. So now when I think about getting married, I can't picture myself inviting her or wanting her anywhere near us. It's a hard thing to balance. Any advice would be appreciated. Update. First, thanks everyone for the advice and suggestions. I wanted to clarify a few things I've read in the comments. I appreciate all the precautions you guys are suggesting around wedding planning. But we're not getting married this year yet, we'll be in 2026. And we're planning on doing a micro-destination wedding, which means it's less likely for her to be able to interfere. This isn't to say I'm set on not inviting her, maybe it's wishful thinking, but I still have hope she might apologize and change. 2. I do also agree that she needs to speak to someone, therapist or even psychiatrist, just based on the pattern of behaviors. She's struggled with mental health in the past, mostly depression and anxiety. But here's the thing, our parents paid for years of doctor's visits and therapy, but she never fully followed through with it. So it's hard to address it with her, when it seems even though she has every resource to get better, she doesn't. She's very stubborn and also seems to have high highs and low lows. 3. Z and myself are the same ethnicity, but different nationalities, if that makes sense, i.e. I don't think X hates him in a racist way. 4. My sister is gay and in a relationship, so she's definitely not trying to steal my BF. 5. I did try to reason with her when this all blew up, right before our family holiday trip. That was the first time she really blew up at me saying she refused to go because of Z. I tried to talk to her, and called her out that she was lying. But she said I was being manipulated and was trying to cover things. Anyways, it made no sense. We had a great time with my parents and they really like Z, and are very happy for us. A month or so before the holidays, Z told them he's asking me to marry him soon, and they gave him their blessing. Finally and most importantly, she actually just texted me today, after us essentially not talking for 2 months. She asked what I want for my birthday, which is coming up next month. I'm not sure what to say. Part of me wants to confront her, and let her know we aren't okay, that what she's saying is patently untrue, etc. And another part of me wants to either ignore the text or respond as if nothing's happening. If you guys have more questions or need more clarity, let me know. Thanks y'all. Stories number 18. AM, 38F, destroying my family by threatening divorce if my 78F, MIL and 80M, FIL don't move out. I have been married to my 38F, husband, 50M, since 2007, and we have a 13-year-old daughter. I grew up without parents and have been living independently since I turned 18. I'm not accustomed to dealing with the scrutiny of an older people's judgment. I've always dreamed of owning a larger home in the suburbs, but given our jobs, my husband believed a smaller house would be easier to manage. I suggested to my husband that we could buy a home with an in-law suite, which persuaded him to sell our current house and invest in a bigger property. It's been challenging to locate a house with an in-law suite, especially in the area we were interested in, suburbs, excellent school district, 45 minutes to the city. Since we couldn't find a house with an in-law suite, MIL then proposed that we try living together for a while as an experiment. I was hesitant, but my husband assured me that if it didn't work out, they would move out. So, I agreed. Once they settled in, I immediately sensed a heavy atmosphere. I assumed it was just the stress from the move. She complained that the area felt too uppity, and mentioned that our daughter now desires pricey clothes because we chose to live in a wealthy neighborhood. I wouldn't describe our area as affluent, but I guess she thinks so because they moved from a small town. The things my MIL does make me feel alienated, like when she mentioned she doesn't appreciate it when people call her mom, especially if they have their own parents. Since I have been addressing her that way, I've decided to stop. She becomes annoyed with my actions, such as my online shopping habits, and then questions why my name is on the deed. I've endured her constant criticism, reminding myself of her age, but I can't handle it anymore. I told my husband that his parents need to find a new place to live. My husband mentioned that they're elderly and likely don't have much time left, and he would feel guilty asking them to leave. So, once again, I put up with it. However, last night I started reflecting on my life and how constrained I feel in my own home. I told my husband that I would divorce him if they don't move out. I feel guilty about it, but I'm truly at a loss for what to do. Thank you for any advice, and if I'm mistaken or being overly sensitive, I'll happily reconsider my actions. Edit. I'll address some of your questions here in the edit. We started dating when I was 19, and I admit our relationship wasn't balanced. I cherish my family and want my daughter to experience a normal childhood with both parents together, something I never had. I don't want her to endure what I went through. I try not to live a life filled with regrets, so I focus on reflecting on my past and changing what I can. I understand that regretting past actions and decisions is a waste of energy. I can't turn back time, but I can learn from it and move forward. My husband was there when she questioned why both our names were on the house deed. Initially, I didn't give it much thought or see the significance of her questioning. I usually don't overanalyze what people say, and I assumed she mentioned it because she said that, back in her day, only the person whose credit was used would be on the deed, not both spouses. I explained to her that this is no longer the case. Reflecting on it now, I feel quite offended that she even brought it up. It seemed like a minor issue at the time, but it actually holds more weight than I initially realized. My in-laws were residing in an apartment before moving in with us. They didn't contribute to the down payment, or any funds spent on the purchase. They don't pay rent or utilities, we cover all expenses except groceries, which they handle. They lavish affection on our daughter, their only grandchild, and tend to spoil her. They're not ill, but they might have a typical cold or flu. They've been living in our house since 2021. Stories number 19. Am I wrong to not invite fiancé's friend's girlfriend who has bullied me? Hi friends, in a bit of a pickle here. We're sending invites out in a few weeks and I do not want to invite my fiancé's friend's girlfriend for the main reason that she's been directly disrespectful to me and deeply hurt my feelings repeatedly. My fiancé thinks that inviting the friend but not inviting the girlfriend, even when sitting the friend down and privately explaining our decision and the reasons why, will ruin his friendship of 15 years. We're planning to speak with him privately before invitations go out so he's not blindsided and because we value his friendship and want him to be at the wedding. We also have firm reason to believe that he is being controlled, isolated, and abused by this girlfriend. He's never allowed to hang out with anyone, hasn't asked my fiancée to hang out in about 8 months, won't play video games with anyone unless she's busy or visiting family, he has to speak in a super quiet, calm manner with her or she yells at him, he hides things from her, and he openly tells our friends that she's a dumb bee asterisk 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 asterisk. So we all get the feeling that he knows she's a problem but doesn't want to face that reality or admit it or dismantle his life because it's more familiar to just stay with her. I was very close friends with his girlfriend until earlier this year, close enough that she was my maid of honor. She ghosted me for my bachelorette planning, thankfully showed up for the day of, but derailed the bachelorette so that she could buy gifts for her mom and get the items she wanted out of the day. My bachelorette was a single day at a local, cheap, amusement park, because I didn't want anyone to be saddled with the expensive weekend-long out-of-state trip, and she started arguments with several of the other women who attended. I later found out, it was so bad that the other car of girls talked about her the entire drive down and back home because of how she ghosted everyone, argued, and then made decisions for me on my one bachelorette day. She made fiancé's friend pay for her to attend the bachelorette day. To sum up a lot of issues and incidents, she publicly humiliated me in front of our other friends, verbally abused me and cursed at me when I drove her home from a bar, refused to wear a $99 dress we both picked out for the wedding day, told me she doesn't believe in marriage and doesn't know why anyone gets married, told me she hates weddings, said if her boyfriend, fiancé's friend, proposed tomorrow that she would tell him no and that she doesn't like men and is only with him just because, etc. One of the most hurtful things was when we were talking about life stuff and I told her that she was my best friend and I really love her and our friendship, and she just looked at me and said nothing. It was so awkward and embarrassing, I really felt like yeah, this person does not see me as a friend. She lived within walking distance to me and would always have a reason why she couldn't hang out with me until her boyfriend was out for a night and then she wanted to hang out. There's so much more than this here that is just too much to get into. I let most of these things go without a word to her about it. Things were so awful and I was crying a lot over how she was making me feel in our friendship that I decided to just ask what was going on and if she wanted/needed to drop out of the wedding, that was more than okay. She denied that and said that things were fine. Okay, took her word for it. Less than a month later, she continued to not talk to me so I grew a backbone and said things weren't really going well so I think she should just focus on things in her life that are understandably important, work, and I'll just not have MOH. She was very offended over this and accused me of calling her poor. I did not and have never said anything like that to anyone in my life, and didn't speak to me for about 2 months. After those 2 months, she came to my house unexpectedly and accused me of recording our last conversation, which again, I did not do this and would have nothing to even gain from doing that. It was a completely baseless accusation that she had no proof of. I repeatedly denied this and she said, okay that's all, and went home. No apology for that. After that, I blocked her on everything and have not spoken to her since. She attended someone else's wedding, she openly hates the groom, and she literally pulled a chair away from me when I was about 3 feet away from sitting in it so I sat somewhere else to avoid being near her and her petty behavior. She was at a Christmas party I attended recently at a longtime friend's house and implied that someone was going to drug her at the party. Before my fiancé and I left, she told me, Merry Christmas, it was good to see you, and went to give me a hug. I said nothing to her and walked around her. The whole thing was just absolutely insane to pretend that we're still friends or something. To me, I think it's reasonably justified to not want this person at our 50-person wedding. It would be different if she had apologized after her accusation or just would have never done that. But because of her behavior and the emotional toll it took on me, I really cannot have her there on a day we're paying a lot of money for and that should be full of people who love us and support us. Our friend group does not invite her to anything but invites her boyfriend because we all like him. Sometimes she shows up uninvited and it's incredibly awkward for everyone. My fiancé agrees that she shouldn't be invited but thinks we should still invite her anyway because of his friendship with her boyfriend and it would be rude to not invite her. I think respect is a two-way street and we shouldn't be obligated to invite someone who has treated me this way, regardless of who they're associated with. So again, we're planning to speak with him about this and emphasize that we want him to attend but understand if he can't or if attending would make things difficult for him at home. Thoughts? Am I being completely irrational here and need a reality check? Stories number 20. Aita for refusing to make amends with my sister. Advice needed. First time posting, and I'm on my cell phone, so bear with me. A little background, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. Elizabeth, 45, Mary and John, twins 43, and myself, 40F. Not to be dramatic, but I've always been the black sheep of the family. My dad told my mom to abort me when she found out she was pregnant with me, and I've been treated differently. For example, my dad refused to come to my high school graduation because he'd booked a vacation he refused to reschedule, even though I begged him to come. I always felt different in the family, and was definitely the one to act out and behave wildly. In my mid-30s, I started to mature, did some traveling, gained some life experiences, and spent a lot of time in therapy that helped me start to settle. I went back to school, got a degree and began a career instead of a job. I was really proud of myself and how much I had grown. I still wasn't close with my siblings, but that's also on me since I was learning to be independent and didn't reach out much to my family. They knew I'd do whatever I could to be there for them, but we didn't actively seek each other out to do things. My sisters hang out together, but I wasn't invited unless I asked to come along. I met and married a man, Zach, 45M, and for a while things were fine. I started to get closer to my sister, Mary, and her husband would spend time with my husband and I. Mary's marriage wasn't the best, but I knew it wasn't my place to give her my opinion, so I stayed out of it and just listened and supported her when she would complain. In time, Zach and I were spending a lot of our free time with Mary and her husband. I kept my marriage issues to myself. My mother has a tendency to exaggerate problems and share issues with the rest of the family, and after a situation where she shared something personal with my siblings, I made the decision that any issues with Zach would not be shared with anyone in the family. As far as they were concerned, my marriage was just fine. Except it wasn't. I was deeply unhappy and Zach and I weren't able to work through our issues. He thought I was cheating on him, I wasn't, and I realized that I couldn't stay with someone who didn't trust me. This isn't the only reason we divorced. This was the last straw in many years of unhappiness and I couldn't take it anymore. The day before I asked for a divorce, I called my eldest sister, Elizabeth, and told her what was going to happen. I asked if I could come see her after the conversation to give some space and have time to decompress. Elizabeth was very supportive and said she was happy to have me over. I asked her not to tell anyone since I knew how close Mary was to Zach, and I didn't want him to hear it from anyone except me. I felt he deserved to hear it directly from me since this is the adult thing to do. Elizabeth kept silent. After I asked for the divorce, I knew Zach would run to Mary and her husband and spin some sort of story. I called Mary and explained in a very calm manner what was going on so she could hear it from me. She said she was sorry to hear this, but said she was there to support me if I needed her. As predicted, Zach spun a story and told them I was cheating on him. To solidify Mary and her husband would stay on his side, Zach told Mary that I had said some very negative things about her, and she believed it. Mary called our mother and told her Zach's side of the story as well as the negative things I said, and her and my stepdad also believed him. My brother, John, is Mary's fraternal twin, so he just goes along with whatever Mary says. Eventually, I'm completely ostracized from the family, to go through my divorce alone. I was devastated. I had no idea what I had done to deserve this silence from my family because no one was talking to me. When my mom finally listened to what I had to say, she began crying and apologizing to me for not believing me. Zach's facade had started to crack, and my mom started seeing the things I was talking about regarding Zach's behavior. She told me that Zach had told Mary the first had said negative things about her, but my mom wouldn't tell me what was said. She felt it needed to come from Mary to repair our relationship. She encouraged both Mary and myself to reach out to each other to talk things over. Here's where I may be the asshole, I refused. In my mind, I feel that if Mary feels that I said something to hurt her, she needs to let me know. I'm angry that my family abandoned me during a major life event like a divorce. I know that my behavior as a young adult was wild and unhinged, but I had proven for almost a decade that I had grown up. But you think so little of my character. Okay, I'm good to not beg you to listen if you've already passed judgment on me. With a lot of therapy and distance, I now live on the other side of the country. I'm starting to find some peace with the whole situation. However, my mom will occasionally ask me to reach out to Mary and talk to her. I told her that as long as she and her husband are still friends with Zach, I will have nothing to do with them because I don't trust them. I have learned to set my own boundaries, and feel that if I open a line of communication with them while Zach is still around that they'll tell Zach about my life. Zach had broken into my social media and was keeping tabs on me without my knowledge for a while, so I do everything I can to keep anyone out who may potentially share information with him. I know this is fact because Zach boasted to my mom and stepdad that he knew everything I was doing because he was in my social media. I also won't speak to Mary and her husband because they still call me names and keep trying to manipulate my mom and stepdad to stop talking to me again. They think I'm a slut and a whore for cheating on Zach. I feel like I'm doing the right thing by keeping this boundary in place. But am I the asshole for refusing to repair my relationship with Mary while Zach is still in the picture? Stories number 21. My neighbors are so intrusive. So I live in an apartment in the city and the apartment faces another set of apartments. The close proximity means that you can see a lot of what is going on, but the rest of the tenants just keep to themselves rather than glaring multiple times a day. I'd say the distance is around 20 meters. Recently, some new people moved in and all they do is stare. It's getting to the point where it is bizarre and it doesn't matter what my partner and I are doing, they will be staring. Our kitchen, dining and main bedroom are visible from their apartment, we can only see their living/kitchen area. I had friends over last night and the guy came onto the balcony and was taking off his shirt and belt whilst staring directly at us. It was like he thought he was Christian Grey or something. A few moments after, his girlfriend came out and they were doing the Titanic pose and stared at us for a good 20 minutes before they went back inside and continued to stare from their sofa. It's getting wildly uncomfortable, I can't lie. How can I play pranks on them to get them to stop staring? Stories number 22. How can I get justice from my evil ex-wife stealing our child's child support money? Hey all. I just joined this subreddit and still kind of a noob to Reddit, so apologies if I didn't follow some rules correctly. I wanted to see if I could get some ideas from the wonderful people of Reddit, so here goes. And apologies for the novel, but I feel I need to set the context. I'll include a TLDR at the bottom. About 20 years ago, me and a friend I partied with got closer and started a relationship, mainly based on partying and sex. Bad idea, I know. Well, a few months later and we find out she's pregnant. I asked her to marry me since it was the right thing to do, and she said yes. In retrospect, I should have not married for having a child out of wedlock. Shortly after my daughter was born, things went south. We were 25 and 27 and I told her we're parents now and getting a bit too old to continue raving and clubbing every weekend and getting blitzed out of our minds and that we needed to be good parents, so we should drastically cut back on the partying. She did not like this one bit and so started the downfall of our marriage. She kept partying, drank a bottle/box of wine every night, and found out later that she was having both men and women over to our house for drugs and sexy time while I was working third shift, trying to support our new family. After about a year of us being married, she, out of the blue, served me papers for divorce. I was angry and hurt, but we weren't really that close since we had only been together about a year and our relationship did not have a solid foundation to begin with, so I wasn't too overly upset by it. I said, fine, I'll go through with your divorce, but don't take my daughter away from me. What do you think she did next? That's right, took my daughter from me and used her as a pawn to gain control over me and take my money. We lived in a smallish, southern city where the judges are old AF and old-fashioned and automatically go with the mother getting all of the rights, custody of the kids, the house, the money, etc. I fought as long as I could, but eventually ran out of money to keep paying my lawyer, not to mention my lawyer was horrible. She had her parents who had decent money bankrolling her lawyer fees while I had to pay for my legal battle out of my own pocket, on a then slim hourly wage. I eventually ran out of money, so she won the court proceedings. I probably would have lost anyway due to the above comments. Years later, her lawyer actually admitted to me out in public that she was sorry she represented her and wished things would have worked out in my favor, but too little, too late. My ex kept my daughter from me the maximum amount of time she could. I got to see her every other weekend and that hurt more than anything. On top of that, she moved 2 hours away and constantly tried to get out of doing her half of the traveling, leaving me to do the traveling both ways. I found out so much about my ex after the divorce, such as the infidelity and drug use. Another reason I lost the legal battle, because I couldn't prove she was a horrible person/mother. She even once had Child Protective Services called on her because of her drug use. She failed the drug test given to her by CPS and they told her they would return in 1 month to test her again, and if she failed, they would take my daughter from her and give her to me. Unfortunately, they never showed back up to test her again. Fast forward several years later and my daughter is now 14 and her mother is ruining her life. She let her stay home from school so much that I started receiving nasty warnings from child services that they were going to charge us for truancy. Her grades were straight Fs. My daughter just recently admitted to me that her mom exposed her to pot at age 13. When my daughter was about 10, she stumbled across her mom's drugs to which I wanted to use to my advantage to get custody, but didn't want to put my daughter in a tough spot. Finally, her mother realizes she's a horrible parent and asks me to take her since she is unable to care for her anymore. I of course agreed and my daughter came to live with me full time, barely ever even seeing her mother anymore. I got her back into school regularly, got her grades back up to B's and C's, and got her back on track to graduate on time. When my daughter came to live with me, I asked her mother if I could stop paying child support since she would now be living with me full time, to which she agreed. That was a stupid mistake of mine and I should have went to a lawyer to get the custody arrangements changed, but I didn't. 3 years later, CPS sends me a letter saying they are going to garnish my check $400 per month to make up for the missed child support despite my daughter being with me full time. I called some lawyers who all recommended not to take her to court to change the custody and stop child support because of the old-time judges we still had in our small town, meaning it would be very likely I would still lose the case and then be out potentially thousands in lawyers' fees for a lost case, and that also, my ex could just drag out the court proceedings until my daughter was an adult and the child support was all paid anyway. So in my attempts to stop paying child support since I had my daughter full-time anyway, I asked her mom if she would just send me back the child support money that I was paying her during these 4 years, to which she said, no, I owe her that money and she deserve it. Note, I didn't ask her to give me a dime, just my own money back. Also, note, that my daughter never saw a dime of that child support money as the majority of it went to her mom's drugs and alcohol and her other 3 kids/babies that she had, each with 3 different men after me. I'm not as angry about the $70,000 that I paid her in child support while she had my daughter despite not much of it being used for my daughter, but I'm really mad about the $20,000 that she continued to take after I had my daughter full time because she couldn't take care of her, all while I had to take our daughter and get her life back on track. I'm mad that my ex didn't give my daughter a dime of that money, and I'm mad that I pay for my daughter's health insurance, car insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, vision insurance, AD&D, phone bill, and car insurance, and gave her a $15,000 car, while her mom hasn't paid one bloody red cent. She doesn't even have any insurance on my daughter. I want justice for what that evil witch has done to me and my daughter, and I want the child support money back that I paid during the 4 years I took care of her full time. I'm ordered to continue paying another $3,000 of child support until it will all be taken care of, at which time my daughter will be a few months into her 20th year on this earth. Yes, I made some dumb decisions, but it's not right and I want justice. Help me, people of Reddit, you're my only hope. TLDR, married druggy alcoholic woman due to getting her pregnant while dating. She divorced me for no reason after 1 year while cheating on me the whole time unbeknownst to me. Took my daughter from me to use as a pawn and for child support. About ruined my daughter's school life until eventually admitting she couldn't take care of her and asked me to take her from her, to which I agreed. But then had my salary garnished for the child support I didn't pay because I had my daughter full time for 4 years and got her life back on track while her mom refused to give me the money back. She's still collecting child support from me to this day despite my daughter being nearly 20 years old. How can I get justice? Vengeance. Stories number 23. I fucking hate being a woman. I hate being a woman, I hate it so much. For several reasons, but the one that's pissing me off the most is periods. I'm so sick and fucking tired of period. They destroy my mental health every month and have ever since I was 12 years old. It's so expensive and to not be able to afford period products is stressful and makes me so sad. I literally can't afford to fucking plug my coochie up. That's fucking ridiculous. Diva cups are actually impossible, don't get me started. I'm so upset right now with literally $1 to my name and a couple tampons left. Edit, men please stop being cruel on this post, thanks. And to the ones being nice, genuinely thanks. Another edit, I couldn't have expected such kindness from this post. Thank you so much for your advice and everything. It means a lot. Stories number 24. AIOR about an incident that happened to my daughter at school. My daughter just started middle school last week. Yesterday a boy put pencil lead into her water bottle straw and she didn't notice. When she went to drink from it, another girl spoke up and said, "Don't drink that. Peter, put something in it." My daughter looked inside and saw the pencil lead in her water. Boys were laughing at her, including the one that put it in there. My daughter told the teacher and the teacher yelled at the kid, and that was it. The boy asked if she was going to tell his parents and she said no, it's not that big of deal. I was pissed because pencil lead and the soft tissue of someone's throat could have been an issue. A serious medical issue? Probably not. But it's contaminating someone's water. I wrote the school asking if they would check in on the incident, given it's an actual crime to mess with someone's food or water. At the very least there should be an incident report about it so the boy's parents get notified. I would want to be notified if my kid did something like that. This is where more rage comes in. The counselor met with my daughter and wrote me an email. In this email she stated she met with my daughter and she let my daughter know that she didn't need to tell the teacher and could have just told the boy directly that she didn't like that, and to not do it again. She then goes on to explain to my daughter that the boy probably had a crush on her, and sometimes boys do that when they like her. She then went on to say she told my daughter to make sure she doesn't leave her water unattended and to maybe put a cap on the straw. As if she should carry that shit around and it's her fault this FKER put shit in her water. I'm so pissed about this. I wrote her back saying that I felt like the school was stating contaminating someone's food or water is not a big deal, blaming my daughter for not watching her water bottle 24/7 even when somewhere else I in the classroom, and then saying boys will be boys because they like her. What the actual F? Am I overreacting? My husband is a teacher in the district and says he also thinks it's weird how they are handling this, but he's used to elementary school standards. Looking for honest replies. Consensus, not overreacting. Update. I just got my daughter's side of the story for how the conversation went down, and it's even worse than how the lady described in the email, which was already bad. This lady gets my daughter out of class and sits her down. Mind you, I asked for a report to be filed and they were supposed to be talking to her just to get my daughter's account of what happened. So my daughter says the lady sat her down and asked her to tell her what happened. My daughter explained what happened. This lady then tells her that this issue is a 1 out of 10 in terms of severity. She said if something is a 1 to 5 you know what you should do. Handle it yourself, and this being a 1 means you shouldn't have told a teacher and tried to work it out on your own. My daughter asked her, well then what's a 6 to 10? The lady says something serious like cutting your arm off. My daughter was shocked. I think this is the first time she's ever been acutely aware of an adult being so in the wrong. My daughter confirmed this lady said the boy probably had a crush on her and that's why he probably did it. Along with the, make sure you watch your water bottle, don't be leaving it around. BS. I am so pissed off. If she would have just listened, reported it, contacted the boy's parents, and made sure it was clear he can never do this again, that would have been the end of it. Now I find this counselor to be just as big or bigger issue than the incident itself. I'm so mad I'm sick to my stomach. Update 2. I slept on it and wrote an email to the principal, counselor, and some other lady they had tagged if I wanted to report the actual incident after telling me and my daughter to let it go. By the way, the principal was on all the email threads already. I factually described what happened, what was said in email, quoting email from counselor, what was said to my daughter, and simply asked if everyone at the school is in agreement with how this incident was handled and the messaging that was said. I referenced the harm of messaging to girls, boys hurt you because they like you, that everyone had mentioned, and also asked if they support what was said to my daughter. I said whether they support this response, or disagree with what was done, I would like that conclusion in writing. I am giving them one last opportunity to correct this before deciding what to do next. Update 3. To clarify, these were mechanical pencil sticks that can puncture skin or soft tissue, not a little piece of dull lead from the tip of a pencil. Also, I am aware it's not actually lead and just called that. My concern was puncturing the tissue, not poison. Also, I got a call from a woman at the school who is actually in charge of writing up the incidents, and she 100% acknowledged this should have been reported and handled as a more serious issue. I can't tell you how much better it felt simply hearing someone acknowledge the problem. She isn't in charge of the counselor and said she saw my email though and is curious to see how they respond. Still waiting to hear the response. I'll figure out next steps from there. After asking some other people I know in the area that are teachers that were shocked with the response, I'm expecting some kind of apology to come through, but we will see. Update 4. Post got locked for some reason, but I have a final update. There was a discussion among the staff and found big differences in opinion from the counselor and others, and it was decided to in fact create an incident for this. Others found tampering with another kid's food or drink a major issue. They called the kid down to the office, and called his mother. His mother apparently was horrified, apologized, and agreed to the punishment action the school decided on. I'm not aware of what it is, but I was fine that it was reported and addressed. The principal met with me and was very apologetic and acknowledged the response from the counselor was wrong. He asked me to come down and chat with the counselor and himself. I agreed. I sat down with the principal and counselor, and it went down like this. I reiterated my offense about her bringing romantic feelings or motivations into the conversation and justifying the behavior with harmful actions. I used a lot your comments to help support how telling girls this is how boys behave when they like, can lead to women gravitating toward harmful and abusive relationships. Mind you, when I'm telling her this, her face is like surprised Pikachu turned scowl. I told her, clearly by your face I can see we have disagreement here, do you understand where I'm coming from at all? She kept saying things like, well, I don't know what your daughter said. Or, I don't know what your daughter's takeaway is. And multiple times I had to reference the fact I had in writing, from her, what she said she said. The almost hilarious part about this, is that the principal kept backing me up saying, yeah, I read that part of the email too, it was in there. She tried directing blame or confusion on my daughter multiple times, but you better believe I had that email pulled up on my phone ready to reference it each time. She even said, I'm a feminist, in which I said, I don't know what your personal beliefs or stances are, but somehow they got extremely disconnected, or reflected, in your words that were a net negative outcome for my daughter's mental health. I would not let the conversation go, or her deflect blame, until I 100% got her to acknowledge this. I was incredibly patient and calm because, to be honest, my goal wasn't to fire anyone. I genuinely wanted to come to a better understanding so that she approached these situations differently. I also asked that they create training and supportive documentation around how to handle these situations that is both transparent to the staff and the kids, since there seems to be massive gaps in understanding that can have serious consequences. Anyway, picked up my kid, she was all smiles as we talked about it, and I role-played my side, the convo versus the counselors. We got boba while talking about how she's going to vet the loves of her life. She even said, if boys like you they should say something nice or, just tell you. We then went on to list all the ways we thought it would be nice to have someone show they like you. Stories number 25. Aita for taking my boyfriend and his daughter to my family gathering knowing it would make my BL uncomfortable. Hey everyone. So, I know the title is awful, but that's literally what went on. For a bit of context, I, M22, have been dating my boyfriend Mark, M27, for 2 years. He has a daughter Lily, F7, which is important for the story. I met my Mark 5 years ago, when I began babysitting his daughter while he worked, single dad, mom is deceased, and since Lily and I got along great, I became the sole babysitter when he needed. It was practical because we were living 2 streets apart, and just overall the best choice because I was available, liked them and they liked me. But eventually, him and I fell in love, and I quickly moved in with him and his daughter, to whom I became a second dad. But here's the core of the problem, my sister, F35, is married to my BAL, M33, so every family gathering, I see him. He's relatively a nice guy, though we're not friends, but he never met Mark. When I started dating Mark, he didn't want to come to my family gatherings at first, because he's not comfortable around people, he's a shy guy, and of course I understood that. But last week, it was my mom's birthday, and she really wanted him and our daughter to be there, so he finally accepted. When my sister and my BL found out he would be there, they were mad at me, and I didn't understood why at first, until she took me apart and called me insensitive and egoistic toward my BL for inviting him, even though I had no idea why it made him uncomfortable. Apparently, when he was young, his parents divorced because his dad cheated with his babysitter, and it caused him a traumatism. I told her it was bullshit, that my boyfriend was part of my life, part of my family, and I wouldn't exclude him because her husband was uncomfortable. I also reminded her that there was no cheating, no breaking of trust or anything in my relationship with Mark, but she just called me insensitive again and left. My mom's birthday party was 2 days ago, and my family loved Mark and Lily. But all day, my sister and BIL kept glaring at us and muttering insults or mean comments under their breath. They brought it up again after dinner, but directly to my boyfriend and our daughter this time, telling her that your dad and his boyfriend are disgusting freaks, or that he's a cheater who doesn't care about your dead mom. Obviously, my boyfriend and I absolutely lost it against them. Knowing my boyfriend's temper, I told him to take our daughter to the car while I was ripping a new one to my sister. We left shortly after apologizing to my mom for the mess it caused. Now, my family's group chat is divided, mostly everyone is on our side, but a few of my extended relatives are on my sister BIL's side, saying that we went too far and should have just ignored them or went back home. Now, I know that my mom asked for them to come, but I'm feeling really guilty that it ruined her birthdays to have this drama. So, AIT. Stories number 26. My sister wants to use a burial plot she doesn't own. My sister, 54F, and I, 63M, are estranged for a lot of reasons. She was the golden child. I was given a 63 Chevy pickup when I got my driver's license. She got a Mustang convertible. I went to college and she did drugs and had children without marriage. I got student debt. She got a mobile home, which she, of course, lost, due to drugs. She had 2 wonderful kids that we were able to get taken from her and are doing well. Our father raised them. My father and mother were divorced in the 1970s due, in part, to the stress of my sister. My mother tried to help her. She let her live with her and helped her get jobs, but she always relapsed. So now to the present situation. My father died 4 years ago and I bought him a nice burial plot in Bozeman, Montana. The plot is in my name and is in a very nice location in the veteran section. My mother died last summer. I went up and was at the hospital when she died. My sister was nowhere around. We were able to reconnect without her. My mom's will stated that my sister and I were supposed to get the house jointly, but somehow she got on the deed by right of survivorship, which meant she got it. She tried to get me to help pay the remaining mortgage, but that wasn't going to happen, so she had to sell and I bought it. She was mad and took mom's remains and disappeared, so we couldn't hold a ceremony. Now 6 months later, she reappears and says that she's paying for a burial. But here is the catch, my mother is a veteran, so she has a veteran group to pay for the room, the VA for the headstone, and I get a call from the funeral home asking if they bury her with dad. Someone who was divorced from for 50 years. Update, my sister wants to use a burial plot that she doesn't own. So, the short backstory, my sister is a bitch who is holding my mother's remains hostage to get her way. She wants to bury my mother in the plot I own that I buried my father in. They have been divorced for more than 40 years. The update, after some research I offered to pay to inter my mother in the veteran wall. My sister threw a fit. Not directly to me, we don't talk. She just let the funeral home know she wouldn't return the remains. I would have to buy a few plot, but I just bought a house and I am furnishing it, so money it tight. She knew that. It was mom's house and she is mad I bought it. She has driven by it several times. I am about to put it out on the short-term rental market. So, after talking to my family, the grandchildren and others, I have thrown in the towel. We are burying mom in dad's plot. She will have an ground brass marker. It kills me that my sister has reduced my mom's service to a brass welcome mat to my father's headstone. My family has said they will know, but damn, it hurts. My sister cannot take some money from the sale of the house and buy a plot or split the cost with me. Stories number 27. Aita for telling my daughter it's none of her business if I date and I don't care if it's disrespectful to my late wife. My wife passed away from a terminal illness 5 years ago. My daughter was 17 at the time, and it really affected her a lot as she was really close to her mom. I struggled a lot the next few years. I had a lot of really dark thoughts, which I also shared with my sister, as my sister and I really close. My sister supported me through my grief, but also encouraged me to start going out because she did not like the dark thoughts I was having. I gradually started going out, and my sister encouraged me to start dating too, and said I have grieved a lot and I do not deserve to grieve the rest of my life. I went on a couple of dates from dating apps, but I still had a lot of grief and just wasn't feeling it. Last year, my sister set me up with her childhood best friend Haley, and said Haley has always had a crush on me. I've known Haley for years, but to be honest, I was shocked Haley was interested in me, because she is gorgeous and has a really sweet personality and I don't know what she saw in me. Haley and I started casually dating, but in just a couple of weeks, we realized there were really strong feelings, and we made our relationship official. It was the first time in a really long time I was feeling something other than grief. I was feeling happy and blissful. Haley moved into my house a couple of months ago. I am still trying to take it slow, but Haley just has a lot of strong positive feelings for me. I've never felt like this ever in my life. Of course, now that I moved Haley into my house, I had to loop in my daughter and let her know that we were official. My daughter was obviously not happy at all, which I understand. When my daughter came over to my house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, she told me she did not like how Haley and I were all lovey-dovey with each other. I tried to be understanding, but my daughter just kept insisting on how this was disrespectful to her mom's memory. Last night, my daughter video called me and again talked about Haley and how our relationship was disrespectful to her mom and how I was never lovey-dovey with mom like I am with Haley. I kind of reached my limit and snapped and told my daughter it's none of her business if I date. I also told her I don't care if it's disrespectful to my late wife, I'm allowed to move on. I sort of regretted what I said, because my daughter just broke down in tears after that and hung up the call. I do feel guilty about it, but also, I just think my daughter can't control my life. She's an adult and doesn't live in my house anymore. Aita. Stories number 28. My BF stayed the night in my dorm. His mom came and picked him up because he didn't tell her where he was. So my BF and I have been dating for 5 months now. We've never really spent the night together because his parents have that limit. We are both 19. I asked him if we could please spend the night together because I'm tired of sleeping alone, and he agreed. We had a nice night and we were both happy. At 4 a.m., his mom knocked on the door with the RA. We got dressed and answered it, and she said he needs to go home and she's been worried. He hasn't answered her. She said hi to me lol. She left with and then he has been texting me. I asked if he was in trouble and he said yes. Is this all very immature? Should he have stayed with me? Is it weird for wanting to sleep next to him? She wants to stop us from being intimate but we have sex between classes lol. What should I think about this? Stories number 29. Boyfriend's dog ruined my brand new $2,500 couch 20 minutes after delivery. Got a big bonus at work. Decided to buy myself a new couch as I could finally afford one. Been dating my boyfriend for about 6 months and we do not live together. 20 minutes after setting it up, his 2-year-old German Shepherd gets a case of the zoom eyes and decides my new couch looks like a fun jungle gym. He completely ruined multiple cushions with scratches and tears. I warned my boyfriend when I bought the couch it was a big purchase for me and we needed ground rules for his dog as I did not want it getting ruined, no dog on the couch, etc. I am so fucking pissed. I barely even got a chance to sit on it. Stories number 30. AITJ for refusing to help my neighbor with her garden because she didn't invite me to her barbecue. I, 19M, live in a big house with my GF 18 where most people know each other and occasionally have get-togethers. Recently, my neighbor, Rachel, 45F, threw a big barbecue party and invited most of the street, except for me. I didn't think much of it and assumed she had her reasons. A few days later, Rachel asked me to help her with her garden, specifically with my favorite plant, as she knows I'm quite handy with gardening tools. I politely declined, saying I was busy. She seemed a bit taken aback and asked again, more insistently this time. I again declined, adding that I felt a bit hurt not being invited to her barbecue. Rachel got defensive, saying the barbecue was a spur-of-the-moment thing and she didn't have space for everyone. I replied that it was fine, but I still didn't feel like helping with her garden after being excluded. Now, some neighbors are calling me petty for not helping out, while others think Rachel was in the wrong for not inviting me in the first place. AITJ. Stories number 31. I told my parents 54M and 49F to write me 26F out of the will if I had to become a Christian to inherit. My parents, M54 and F49, have started planning what to do with their assets once they die, and have asked me, F26, to be their executor. I recently had a conversation with my mom that left me in a daze, and I'm still processing everything I said. She was talking about how she would like to set up their will like Dave Ramsey did. Apparently, Dave Ramsey sat down with his kids and told them that any inheritance they receive would need to be used for God's will, and if they didn't align with those values, they wouldn't inherit anything, that they were in or they were out. As soon as she explained that, I felt all my defensive walls go up. I have a lot of religious trauma, and the thought of being asked to become a Christian, or pretend to be one, just to receive an inheritance felt like too much. I told her if that's what they wanted to do, she should write me out of the will now because I won't be bribed into becoming a Christian. She said it wasn't a bribe, but more like a business. Her logic was that you wouldn't let someone inherit a business if they didn't hold the same values as the business. I told her I still see it as a bribe and that it feels like an attempt to dictate my life now and even after they die. I made it clear that even if their millions of dollars are on the line, I wouldn't become a Christian for money. Now, I don't regret what I said, but I also can't believe I said it. I couldn't believe I was basically saying no to a non-insignificant amount of money. I feel like I acted authentically, but I'm scared I might regret it one day. To add context, my religious trauma started in middle school when I was kicked out of the house for being disrespectful. My parents printed out a bunch of Bible verses to justify their actions, telling me it was both right and righteous to kick me out. In response, I wrote an essay supported by Bible verses to show them why what they did was wrong, but my dad dismissed it and said he'd only accept it if it came from a pastor, not me. That was the moment I began doubting my religion. Over the next few years, I thoroughly read the Bible and asked questions of religious leaders, trying to find answers. In the end, I came to the conclusion that the Christian God was either malevolent or grossly misrepresented by man, and that Christianity as a whole went against many of my personal beliefs and morals. Throughout middle school and high school, I was kicked out multiple times, and I lost a lot of faith in both the church and my family during those years. My relationship with my parents didn't begin to repair until I was diagnosed with cancer. During that time, they apologized for their actions, and we started rebuilding our relationship. My relationship with my parents has been much better since then, which is why this conversation about their will frustrated me so much. To make things even more complicated, I'm now wondering if I should tell them to choose someone else to be the executor of their will, like one of my siblings who are Christians. I feel like it's unfair to be expected to do all the work of distributing the money if I'm excluded. I also don't want to put myself in a position where I might be tempted to take something that isn't mine. I'm just so conflicted. On one hand, I don't want to sacrifice my values, or who I am. On the other hand, I can't stop questioning if I'm making the right decision. I know I'm not entitled to my parents' money, and I would have a hard time pretending to be something that I'm not, but I feel a lot of anxiety in my decision. Has anyone been in a similar situation? Do you have any advice? How do you process something like this? TLDR, my parents want their inheritance to only go to children who align with their Christian values. I told them to write me out of the will if that's the case because I refuse to be bribed into becoming a Christian. I'm proud of myself for being authentic, but I feel hurt by their decision, and I'm questioning if I'm handling this situation the right way. My specific question: how do I approach rebuilding trust and maintaining a healthy relationship with my parents after this conversation? Stories number 32. Americans are getting fatter, but it really isn't their fault. Our food is awful. Ever see foreign exchange students come to America? They eat less than they do in their home country, but they gain 20 to 30 pounds. What's going on there? Are they suddenly lazy? Does their metabolism magically slow down? Does being a foreign exchange student make you put on more weight magically? The inverse happens when Americans go to Europe. They say they eat more food and yet they lose weight. Why? Are they secretly running laps at night while everyone sleeps? What magic could this possibly be? People who are skinny, probably from genes and circumstance, are going to reply to this post saying that you need to take responsibility and that food doesn't magically put itself in your body. That's true, but Americans can't control the corporate greed that leads to shit being put in our food. So I'll say it again, it's really not these people's fault. Edit: if you're gonna lay down some badass healthy advice, make it general, don't direct it at me. I'm skinny. I eat fine. So funny how people lose sanctimony from their pores when they talk about how skinny and healthy they are. Man, how pathetic, just can't help themselves. Edit final: I saw a post in r/news that the FDA is banning red dye. Why? Can't Americans just be accountable and read the label and not buy food with red dye in it? What's the big deal?